see. How's it going, bro?
Another day younger, another year.
Absolutely, bro.
How are you, brother?
Good, bro. Good. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you. Trying to new text box overlay. What is this? Trying to find the comments here. All right, well, I can't find it. I think we're just going to run with this. I'm going to send this over to me so I can share the screen, and we're going to get started, guys. All right. Sure, man.
Do you have Wi-Fi?
Yes, it would be, just go to Wizards of Ecom, and then all lowercase, Wizards, #1.
The guest or the regular? I guess the lock one.
All right. Just making sure everything's going good here. Good, brother. What's going on here? There we go. All right. I think we're good. Save those 2 minutes. All right. Oh, you converted it?
Yeah, I have access to the Google Slide. Can I just share it with you?
Sure. Yeah, just email.
Carlos at
bluebirdmarketingsolutions.com. All right, you guys ready? Cool. All right, as you can see, thank you guys for coming out, and everybody on the stream. We finally got the stream back. If somebody, Fernando, I don't know if you have the stream open. Yeah, feedback on the audio, since this is our first time streaming since we moved to the new location. I'm curious how you're hearing my voice. We don't have the audio cubes for the attendees here, so I'll repeat any questions that we get from people that are here. Also, Corey's here, who's going to be presenting. He's presented a bunch, so he'll repeat questions too when you guys ask him, so people on the stream can actually hear it. We're going to clean up this. Let me make sure this is catching good. But we're going to clean up these cables and everything here with the video, so for those of you that are here, that's in the way. Any feedback you can give on that is also appreciated. What we'll do is we'll do our beginner hour. I'll make some announcements. As you can see, we have some of our sponsors on the screen. If you're watching this on the stream, you see the little ticker on the bottom. I think it's called a ticker, that little NASCAR ticker that says the places. You should see that on the stream, but we'll go through a few announcements that we have with the group, and then we'll just do the beginner hour that we normally do. Anybody that has questions on the stream, Fernando will see it, and he could let me know your question. And anybody here who has questions, obviously, we'll handle that here. Sponsors got us some coffee, empanadas, and a bunch of other snacks in the back. Help yourself to them. If you've not been here before, the bathrooms there's 2 bathrooms right outside that missing door that's here. We've only been in this location for about 6 weeks, but we've been meeting together in this meetup group now for over a decade. We just had our 10-year anniversary a few months ago, and we just broke the 1,500 meetup event mark. So it's pretty wild. Thank you, guys. Thank you, man. Thank you. Today's presentation is going to be on wholesale. We haven't done one on wholesale in a bit. I know some of us sell wholesale here, including myself. Just what the doctor prescribed, yeah. So Corey, who is here, it's always a good sign when the speaker's here. Corey's going to be presenting. He's actually in the trenches doing this. He teaches this. He makes money doing this. So like, it's a real practitioner of it. Pound him with as hard as questions as you can. We'll give a reward if you can stump him. But the idea is, as a presenter too, it's an opportunity to learn and have some fun. But he's going to be very generous with what he knows and what he's sharing, and maybe some opportunities to stay connected afterwards. So I recommend asking as many tough questions as you can, starting that relationship, and I'm positive that it will help your business in the future. Most of you know me as a private label seller, and I would say that's within the Ecom space. That is my, that's really my heart and soul right there, is starting brands and selling brands. I would not be able to do what I've done with brands and exited the brands that I have without capital, and wholesale has been absolutely amazing to me in the sense of cash flow. Has gotten a little trickier over the years, and with scale anything can get complicated, but the cash flow is so much better in the wholesale world than it is with private label. And the other thing I'll say, and I won't go too much into wholesale because I want Corey to be able to do his thing, is the way I've approached wholesale to be successfully 15 years ago is completely different than how I do it now. I literally could just pick up the phone or email somebody and just say, I'd want to place an order for blank. There was no question about if I was an Amazon seller. It was just nothing. They saw it. They just sent it to me and thought, you know, all the other stores they've always had sold 1 master box a month, and my little boutique store, you know, must have the secret formula as to why I sell 4 pallets a month. And you know, times change. If you adapted and took lumps, but if you adapted, you're still doing fantastic with the Amazon wholesale model. So good stuff. Even if, I'm saying this to say, even if you're someone that's like getting started in the private label and you're like, I am not trying to bolt anything else on to what I'm doing right now, you're still going to learn a bunch from it, because the majority of the tricks I've learned in the wholesale model. So good stuff. Questions from anybody here before we get started? There's what we were doing before this move, again, like 5-6 weeks ago, is in the beginner hour, instead of having this like awkward silence of who has a question, I was opening my screen and showing you a product find that I found that I thought made sense, or that got the creative juices flowing and they thought might be a educational opportunity. So I have a product that I discovered, and I'll share with you, but just want to make sure, since I know we're getting close to we're in Q4. We're in Q4, and we haven't been able to do this setup in a while. I just want to make sure if anybody has any questions. We're, a month away, roughly, from Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Yeah.
It's too late now to send some FBA shipping tomorrow?
For what?
For Q4?
Well, correcting myself, we're already in Q4. There's an exception to everything, but like you want to get stuff in for Black Friday? Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah, I really don't, I wouldn't have high hopes. Like if everything was riding on it and I needed to get everything there for Black Friday, Cyber Monday and checked in, my prediction is that this Q4, and not to be doomsdayist, I think we should all do this. I think this Q4 is gonna be a logistics nightmare. I think Amazon is super smart and take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is me, I got a GED, dropped out of elementary school. I just did really good on e-commerce, so like, I don't know anything. But I've been doing this a long time, and I think AWD at some point is gonna be I think it's gonna be freaking amazing for some people. But this year, and the way they rolled it out, and the way they raised up these fees in certain areas in FBA and left people kinda, and now if you're sending AWD on the West Coast, you just can't, it's just closed. So like, I hope not, but I really think this Q4 might be Amazon's worst logistically that they've ever had. So I don't have confidence that all my inventory would get there on time and fully sell. Corey, you do a lot of shipping too. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my take is never stop shipping to FBA, like, still ship to FBA as often as you possibly can. But in terms of getting stuff there in time for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, pretty much that ship is already sailed.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you should stop shipping, and it means you can just, I mean, there's nothing wrong with FBM for the rest of the year. So if you get your hands into good inventory, throw it on FBM. Because if anything, FBM is probably going to do even better this Q4.
I agree.
Because of the logistical nightmares, right? So FBM is going to be getting a lot more like what happened in COVID. Q4, right? They were prioritizing FBM buy box because FBM was so high.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do think FBM is gonna be,
Shipping is definitely getting more expensive too, so you have to definitely do both because Q4 you can start to see already the fluctuation of the shipping getting more expensive, especially if you're shipping to the West Coast or we get a lot of orders from California in that area, even if we're down south, and you start to see the differences
Yeah.
between prices and stuff. So I like the idea of never stop shipping. I feel like FBA is a hard transition, right? But if you consistently sending things over, you do better off. And now too, there's a little thing where you put 5 boxes instead of one, and you end up getting rid of the actual that new fee that they have, which is like a storage fee that they charge you if you were to divide your stuff into 5 boxes or send it off, just put 5 boxes, you end up getting rid of that fee. So there's a couple of things you can do to do a little bit better. But yeah, I definitely like the idea of constantly shipping FBA regardless of dates. And Q4 has always been a good FBM, just so you can get the money faster and then you can deploy it again.
sure, yeah. If you have a product that can do well on FBM, and if I'm right, and if this like major collision in their logistics happens in Q4, like this would be a very big year for FBM in Q4. Like, and for us, and that's kind of like why I slipped in the beginning, we've always treated Q4 as November, December, January internally. October for us has never been, I mean, yeah, there's a little up to, but it's never been a like wild, like end of November, December month. And January, I know everybody says it's just a horrible month, but our Januaries are really, really strong.
I feel like everything falls off.
And actually, you said before that.
Yeah.
People that is returning the gift just to buy the things that he really wants to buy.
Yeah, and then the growth of Amazon gift cards has gone up 15% year over year, and I mean, you're probably spending that in January. So January is a really strong year, so strong that we were just like, for Q4 and our ordering purposes and everything, and it usually runs right into Chinese New Year, is on the PL side, is November, December, January. But yeah, all good points. I will say this, for those of you that are like FBA spoiled or like grew up with nothing but FBA, suppliers run out of supplies. So the last thing you want is to have a whole bunch of boxes, a whole bunch of orders, and a whole bunch of products with no tape. Like like it's happened to me before, and next thing you know, you're going into like these office depots and paying like $10 for a tiny roll of tape. Like it could get really ugly. So if you're bracing for that, just have some supplies on hand, okay?
You had mentioned something about 5 cases if you sell three options, right? So it's a $0 option where you have 5 boxes, and then you have where you send it to one location, and then you have 2 locations, and that one they usually you send it to them and they split up the orders, right? So if you were to put, I've noticed, right? Maybe things could change because Amazon's overseas, but I've noticed that when I do 5 boxes or more, I can choose the option which is 0 placement fees, and that doesn't necessarily mean is the cheapest one, but it's definitely the fastest one, right? Because the products are split. They take care of the splitting instead of you shipping it to one place and then get split after, right? So it will take longer. So for times like these, when you're trying to get it in faster, that option usually is the best one because
So the funny thing is I shipped a bunch of stuff last week, and it broke it up, and it told me that, you know, this box here, that box there, so they already did it before I sent it.
So that option that you had was because you probably chose one of the like latter options. Yeah, but the next time you're on that screen, you can see there's an option that is usually grayed out. In order for that option to show up, usually 5 boxes will do that.
Yeah.
That was because you have the multiple settings to optimize the multiple facility centers.
Okay.
You can have optimize the multiple, just a single one, or the other one. So depending on how you configure that there, is going to split the shipment in
Yeah. So for those of you on the stream, since we don't have the cubes out there, just mentioning, if you want to get it there quicker, sending 5 boxes, splitting it up into 5 boxes instead of one, so that it all goes to one facility.
Yeah, and they do the splitting.
And they do the splitting. He feels like that gets it in there quicker for him. And then,
No placement fee.
right. And then Cesar was sharing that, you know, when somebody else had their shipment split up completely and didn't feel like they had that option, that it was probably a setting they had in their shipping settings that was prioritizing that. Any other questions? No? Yep, Ting?
How do you buy box if you do FBM?
Yeah. How to win the buy box if you have FBM. You know, that used to be a stupid, simple question. It used to be the most simplest question to ask. So the buy box has always had a lot of things that weigh on, like different weights that influence having the buy box. The heaviest are going to be best price and FBA. But your contribution to the listing, did you create the listing? Like all those things are going to matter. Now, in your case, I know you're a private label seller. So if your private label listings, let's say, and this happened during COVID, somebody that was, I guess, spoiled by FBA and they just did nothing but FBA, they didn't realize that if you first start selling FBM on a listing, I don't know that Amazon has a term for it, but I just call it Amazon jail, right? You're in this like Amazon jail temporarily. It's really wild. But what it means is you could be the only seller on that listing, but you're FBM, so there is no buy box, right? So that the box that we just referred to, that most people don't know what it is, that thing on the side, that box, it's gone. You don't have the buy box because you haven't really proven to Amazon that you can successfully run an FBM type of business and you're gonna get it to them on time, that you're not gonna like disappear with the money. So, and I'm sure there's other factors there, but so what happens is you're in this weird situation because maybe you were running ads on your FBA stuff, but now you need to run ads still. But remember, one of the qualifications to run ads on Amazon is you have to be buy box eligible. So if you lose the buy box, not only is it harder for people to buy, but you also have your ads turned off. So what I like to do when I start a listing is I'll just push through some intentional sales via FBM. I usually find it to be about 6 to 8. It could be different on different products, but about 6 to 8, and I ship them and I make sure the other side receives them. And I keep that going because you never know what happens until I see that I've been taken out of FBA jail or Amazon jail, not FBA, Amazon jail. Anybody else have any other tactics on that? Because not many people talk about it.
I have one that is a little bit dangerous, but I've noticed that if you turn the lower you put your handling and shipping, so like 0 days, if you do 0 days, you
Yep.
can do a lot better.
Yeah.
Than other people. Yeah, because most people are not doing 0 days, right? Unless if you're a big store, you don't want to do 0 days. It just gets really complicated. But if you're not selling that much, you can do 0 days, and
so you're repeating it for the stream that you can, on FBM, you can lower your handling time in getting the product out, and that'll help influence get you the box. What I've seen though is if there is nobody else on the box, or the private label sellers, like, it really doesn't matter what you put, that they're gonna wanna see some, and again, they don't share the number. I don't know that Amazon even has a name for that period, but you don't hear about it much because, I mean, if we asked everybody here who sells FBA, it's like everyone does FBA, like they don't even attempt to do FBM.
And how about in the, for wholesale scenario, how you buy box? Because I have one item last week when I was on another meeting here, and my price is just literally to match the most FBA price. And then I had one sale for FBM that day, and I went home, and it turned out the buyer was a virgin island.
Yeah, well, so how much did the product, well, how much was the product selling for?
It was like under $15, because from $15, and then even including shipping, I still able to just have the $3.
I mean, one of them could be that if the product under 25 and the person didn't have Prime, then it would have been, Amazon would charge them when they go to check out. But with you, if you had free shipping at that price, then it was a better deal to buy from you.
Okay, so it's most likely it's not I want to buy box, it's someone pick on me.
Yeah, but you need to customize your shipping template. Remove, for example, you can remove Alaska, Hawaii, Virgin Island, one, or put an extra $10, $15 more, so you can cover the shipping.
Now, Carlos, do you mind if I have my 2 cents on that?
Yeah,
Because
please do.
One of the questions was, I think, around winning the buy box as a reseller, or competing with other sellers, was kind of the question. So I've noticed a couple things. One, on the FBM note, exactly what he said. If you go on YouTube and search flips per miles FBM, that's one of my buddies, Miles. He's got a really good YouTube video about how to set up your FBM templates. And one of his suggestions is to have a separate template for non-domestic buyers, right? So like you said, it's like you want to have a shipping template that allows international buyers to purchase, but obviously that shipping cost is going to be greatly inflated because you don't want to have to take a loss because your buyer is located in the Virgin Islands, for example, right? So I'd watch that video and I'd get those. It's just like 2 or 3 different shipping templates set up,
Okay.
30-second setup, and it's kind of set it and forget it. And then part 2, so you're talking about, well, how do we kind of win the buy box, even if we're selling FBA, but we're competing with other sellers? So first and foremost is going to be using a repricer, and a good repricer, and having it set up correctly. So the one that I use is called SellerSnap. I think you use SellerSnap as well.
And they're responsive.
Yep, and they're fantastic. So I just use their AI preset and just set a minimum price and a maximum price and let it go to work. And I'd say 90% of the time, that is going to do what needs to be done to get me in the buy box and make me consistent sales. Now, there are some listings, and we've been dealing with this some recently. For whatever reason, I've noticed it's on a lot of listings that are super high volume, like ones that are selling thousands of units a month, and listings that have established sellers. So it's like the same, 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 guys have been selling on this listing for years. They're always in stock. So like Carlos said, Amazon, quote unquote, trusts them, right? They've kind of won the right from Amazon to be in that buy box more than maybe somebody like me who's just now selling the product for the first time. So I've got to kind of win Amazon's trust, if that makes sense, by what I found being the most effective is within SellerSnap, setting our repricer to undercut those guys by like 10 or 20 cents and hold it there for like 30 minutes and then jump back up and match their price. So SellerSnap lets you create that rule to where undercut for 30 minutes, then match. Undercut for 30 minutes, and then match. And what we found is that we will make a lot of sales doing that. It won't kill the listing, right? Because we're only holding it there for 30 minutes or so. And then after, sometimes it's a few days, sometimes it's a few weeks, sometimes it's a month or 2, but eventually it's like all of a sudden the floodgates open, and now we're selling that product no problem. Amazon trusts us for whatever reason. After we kind of had to make some of those we almost had to like bully our way into the buy box. That's how I explain it to people. So I hope that helps.
Let me add just a couple sentences to that. There's another thing too, if you're not familiar with the pricer. Now Amazon allows you to do something similar from there.
it gives you an option to put a minimum price and then a higher price, and it does the automatically moving of the prices for you. And then another thing that I do too that is enticing not only for the buyer but also for the algorithm is that you can establish 2 or more discounts, right? So you can go there and you can put, oh, if the customer wants 2, then you can give them a 1% discount, 3 more discounts, and then what happens is whenever somebody logs in to buy your product, the main price will be $26, but it will also say 2 packs, 3 packs, 4 packs, and it'll give you a cheaper price. So that usually entices them too. If I'm buying one and I buy toothpaste every month and you're giving me a discount, I go ahead and buy 2, so that usually helps as well.
I'm walking.
Yeah, with the mic.
You guys haven't seen me. I'm like walking around with the mic a little bit because we don't have our mic cubes yet, just so people on the stream can get it. There's a question from the stream?
Could you repeat the YouTube link for that FBM video? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to search, his name's Miles, but his YouTube name is Flips, the number 4, Miles, FBM.
Flips?
Flips, plural, the number 4, Miles, and then the term FBM. And he's got multiple FBM videos, but there's one that I think is like a shipment template setup type video.
This YouTube video or nothing that's like?
Yeah, that's his channel, and then, yeah, if you search on YouTube for that video. Yeah, he's everywhere. He definitely is.
You had a question, Fernando, from the stream?
Yes.
Well, if you just search FBM
Is
there,
it important
Carlos.
to win the buy box as an FBA seller, and what are the advantages?
Well, yes, as in, so if you're selling FB, you want to have the buy box. In almost every scenario, you want to have the buy box that gets you more sales. There's very few arguments, I know you have some experienced sellers in here, that you're okay with less volume, but you just get sales at FBM at a higher price. Like, say every now and then I get caught with some inventory. It's been a while, thankfully, but my supplier all of a sudden went and sold their stuff directly to FBA. Now Amazon's, it ships from and sold by Amazon, and they decided to take the price to $9. And I was selling it and only making a buck or two at, I mean, this is just an example, say $17. So I can't chase them. I have to decide, chase them down, burn out, like just fire sale everything, get as much in capital as I go back, and then just redeploy it. Or Amazon's also horrible, go figure, at staying in stock. They're really, really bad. It's not just something that we deal with. So I could sit on it at a higher price. So what I found was that I was at $17.99 and I was just like, I might as well put it at $19.99. Or I'd get a few sales at $17.99, I raise it to $19.99. I would still get very infrequent sales. And then when they run out of stock, I would, and then if somebody stayed at 17, I'd go back. But you still get very few sales, you know? But in that scenario, it made sense for me. I reordered the product, by the way, which is a gamble. I didn't order as much because Amazon could get better at being in stock. But I was like, I'd love to make $19.99. I'll just treat this as something that I don't sell 1,000 units a month on. Maybe I only sell 60. But it was so easy. I already had the relationship. I was selling other things from them. So I'm here to Flips for Miles.
It should be that first one, yeah. I think it's the first one there, and if you scroll down, he's got a bunch. And then I believe there's even a website, howtofbm.com.
I'm going to see if he's got it in the comments of the video so everybody can see it. Does that answer the question there, Fernando?
Yes, that's not showing on the screen.
Yeah, I'm going to push it right now over here. Either way, I want to show you guys the product before we got the mic. I was over here talking, thinking I'm dropping gold, and I didn't even have the mic. All right. Push this over. Yeah, there we go. But I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and it goes in line with what he was saying. Sometimes when you're selling a product for a longer time, you can even raise your price and you're gonna get the sales just because you've been selling that product before everybody else arrives. So I in the beginning, that fighting price stuff and tanking price is usually like new sellers. When you have relationships established and you have products, enough products, 200-300 products listed, then you don't fight anymore. You just account for lower sales and then add more products. I think that's the best strategy.
Yeah. Well, no, it's here. I would.
And if I think a website, it's just like it'll redirect to Google Doc, but if you go to outsourcing.com, I believe that should redirect to, which is outsourcing.com. It should redirect to Google Doc if it's still active.
That's the seller
Cool, man. That's some valuable information there. All right, any other questions? No. All right, I'm going to share a random product that I came across. Again, the idea here is not for you to go out and get this product and for you to start selling it yourself. What's been happening is a few of you have gotten together and actually ordered some of these products that I've done, but the thing is 6 or 7 of you are ordering the same product at the same time, and then you're going to come in here and deploy the same strategies, whether that's here or in a Facebook group or with some software preaching something. It's normally not a good idea, right? So what happened, what I try to do here is look for products and then kind of share like what my thought process was when I looked at this, so that you could apply that to when you're sourcing products. You with me? Okay, so it's less about the exact product that I'm showing. And the other thing I try to do is I try not, especially since this is the beginner hour, I try not to break out a bunch of software. So me, after 15 years of doing this, I'll break out software, I'll do a bunch of other complicated things, but it doesn't have to be like, this stage doesn't have to involve that. But what happened was, my son, Bruce, and I think a few others might have heard me say this in breakfast a couple weeks ago. Well, Fernando, you might have been there, but my son, he has found Hot Wheels. He's a 6-year-old, right? So he has discovered Hot Wheels, and I love it. I love that he has found Hot Wheels and not something else, right? So, but the thing is, my wife's not so happy about it because he has this track, a race track, this orange thing that clicks together, and it's extraordinarily painful if you step on it with a bare foot. But it runs straight through the house. Like he has found a way to go from the front door, weave around a few, not weave, but like just like push as far as he can to go straight. And he started having a bit of a fit, saying that I needed to get him a loopy-loop. And he kept saying a loopy-loop, and he was teary-eyed, and it was loopy-loop, loopy-loop, and for the life of me, I didn't know what a loopy-loop was. But he was so agitated about it that I wanted to figure it out. Like, I wanted to get him this loopy-loop. So I thought it was like one of those things when you go on it, it starts, spinning around down fast. That's cool. Or it could be the one where you go upside down, that hoop, like a loopy-loop. It was neither. What didn't dawn on me at the time was the track that he got was just straight track. It was straight lines of track. There were no turns. So that's why it was running straight across the house. There was no left turns, no right turns, there was no turns. So imagine doing a racetrack with no turns. So when he broke it down to me, I tried to tell him it was an angle. He's too young for that, but I just said, yes, loopy-loop. So I went online to just go buy a whole bunch of Hot Wheel turns. And that's when I found out that that's not a thing. Hot Wheels sells turns as part of a pack. So if you buy I don't know, they don't have one, but just so you get the idea, if they have a Star Wars racetrack that has some turns in there. So if you bought a whole bunch of packs of these like ready-make models, you have a bunch of turns and then you could use those. But if you wanted to build out something customizable that comes off the kitchen counter, under the chairs, and do all this other stuff, which there's a lot of people, kids and adults I discovered, that really want to do this, then you're kind of stuck. You either have to buy a ton of these different kits and cannibalize them. So I discovered something. I actually love it. But I'm just gonna, I hope there's nothing too racy in my orders, and this does not look, this is not what it looks like. This is a breathing thing that we just got. But I'm gonna look for, I think if I search for Hot Wheels, it'll come up, but it's been a tiny bit ago. Here we go. So, this is what I ordered. $12.99, right? Oh, as you can see, let me go back in my orders because you're gonna wanna see this. So, I ordered, how many of these things did I order? It should show me. Well, no, it's not fully loading, but I bought like 6 to 8 of these things, right? View order, it'll tell me here. 6, I bought 6 of them, right? So I bought 6 packs. Do you know how many come per pack?
You said one.
One.
So why is it a pack, right?
Right. So this is one turn for $12.99. But you're like, they're Hot Wheels. Of course they can do this, right? They're not Hot Wheels. It's compatible with Hot Wheels. you have access to somebody who has a plastic injection molding machine, this is done, which is not that complicated, by the way. Well, for me, but like, so somebody that knows that kind of stuff. You can get this done in China. I mean, you get this done in China for nothing. And I bought 6, nobody buys one of these things, guys. No, trust me, if you're buying this for your kids or yourself, like your kid is not cool with one turn, right? So I bought 6. He wants a lot more of these things, but I bought 6 at $12.99 each. I mean, this was like this seller's killing us. So I started deep diving into this product and this seller, adding compatible with. I think this was a little racy. Normally you got to say compatible with Hot Wheels. They put Hot Wheels compatible. I like what they were thinking, and if Amazon's okay with that, then great. They do need to have compatible and stuff like that, so they're not. There are some words you need to put here to make it sound like you're not Hot Wheels, but the average person looking at this doesn't realize that. And look, they got a blue, a black. Again, you're just changing the color of some pellets that are going in the hopper of a plastic injection molding machine. No brainer. But I was like, surely, and only over $100 a month. Now, I hate a product that's selling for $12.99 on Amazon with Amazon's fees. Like, don't get me wrong, there's not a lot there, but the cost of this thing came in a bag. Like, it's not $1, right? This thing is not $1. It weighed nothing.
What about the packaging?
No, it was a plastic bag. Not even, no, it wasn't even like a Tyvek mailer. This was like, it looked like a Ziploc bag, like minus the zip, right?
What about, so it sounds like you said, right, you bought this in a pack of 6, most people.
No, I bought 6 packs of one,
that's
right.
Yeah, so I feel like most people are probably buying that product in multiples, so maybe that seller, if they were smart, they'd have a single option, it's probably more their loss if they have 3-pack, 6-pack,
100%.
and then you save significantly on the fulfillment fees.
Yeah, they would save a ton. Yeah, absolutely. This person really doesn't know what they're doing. But, okay, so they're not the sharpest tool in the shed, but when you see what they sell and you go into their storefront, you start getting a little envious, all right? So that's what I did. Text Connect, right? So, by the way, I'll save you guys. We could jump into some of these if you want, but every single one of these is compatible with. They are not, this is not another seller name for Hot Wheels.
But in that Hot Wheels at the beginning of the title, I mean, like you said, that's risky, right? Like,
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
But is it just that some brands crack down on that more than others, or?
Well, they're allowed to have it in their title. Like you can have iPhone compatible or compatible with iPhone. I don't play in that space a lot. Or as a matter of fact, I've never played in that space with my own brand, but you know, helping a lot of other people out, I know some that do. I've never seen it, or maybe I'm not paying attention enough, but I've always seen compatible with instead of iPhone compatible. If Amazon's good with that, which it seems that they are, and I've looked at some other, by the way, there's only 2 other people doing this, like one other person, there's 2. There's 2 sellers doing this in all of Amazon. And the term Hot Wheels gets a lot of search, right? But they had the compatible in there, so that's enough. I don't think their sales would have taken that big of a hit by putting compatible with and just changing the order. But yeah, the closer to the front of the title, the more ranking juice that keyword gets. So in this case, you know, kudos to them. But every single one of, I'm gonna go through these really quick, but every single one of these things is compatible with. By the way, this is if you have long tracks and you want to stick them together, this is the adapter right here. And some of these, they're selling like $800 a month, $700 a month, $1,000 a month, $200 a month. But obviously, my son wanted this one. And I meant to bring it today to pass it around. But again, only over $100 a month. It is a shoestring. It is a black boot shoestring. It is 2 tracks. No, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. There are no tracks. It doesn't come with tracks. Let me walk that back. And it comes with these hoops that you see here. It comes with like 6 of them. The whole thing can fit on top of my phone, and like it's not even as thick as the phone. Yeah, and it has a shoestring, and this is just these little squares here is what slides and makes it connect and make it compatible with the tracks that are out there.
How does it fit? Is it polished?
like a glove, yeah. The colors are the same, like Hot Wheel colors that are out there. I mean, this is it.
And one thing I noticed too about this listing, especially the first page that you hovered over, I guess the third, fourth, and fifth images specifically, these are like, or the ones below it, well really those two as well, these are DIY images, like
Yeah.
the seller literally
Yes,
took his
yes.
phone and took a picture
Yes.
on his floor.
Yes.
So I mean, what that says to me is that, again, this guy, you know, power to him, he's doing good, he's selling product, but like, he's not very good at this thing.
No,
So
he's not very good.
somebody who knew what they were doing comes into, you know, this niche is obviously an example, but you find any niche where you've got a couple of small-time guys who, again, they're making money, but it's not optimized. You know, you can come in and displace even some of these bigger sellers with just better branding, better marketing, better SEO, better photos. So yeah, that's kind of one of the first things that stuck out.
For sure. You know what this person's gonna be doing in November, December, January? In sales. Like what's coming for this person. So I did some calculations and I just went in and I just used the Amazon numbers across what they sell in their catalog, which is about a dozen compatible with Hot Wheels accessories, right? Even this shoestring one. And I added it up. Anybody want to take a guess at roughly what they're doing in gross sales? Now they have margin. They have a ton of margin. Yeah, what do you think?
Like during Q4 or outside?
No, just now, yeah.
25, 20, 30K?
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think they do a little bit higher.
20, I came up with 26, so you're closest. About $26,000 a month is what these people are doing. And this is, anybody can do this. Like,
What do you think their margin is on that?
I think it's low dollar amounts after Amazon fees at $12.99, but I would say close to 200%. Yeah,
Probably the initial cost, even though
right, the molds.
because the mold would cost $5,000.
Yeah,
But they're gonna get that free.
yeah, and imagine if they actually invested in images. Like, you know what kind of you know how UGC usually they should have here of people playing with their stuff? Like, I mean, you couple a few GoPros together in this track, you know, like,
Oh, that could, I'm just thinking of how viral that could go.
and TikTok out there right now, I mean,
On a Hot Wheels car and just sling it through those.
yes.
And it's just 100 reviews, so if I didn't.
This is doable. No, you could chase this down. Like, this person is clueless as to what they're doing. I hope they're not a group member, but,
Where's it based out of? Where does it say on the storefront? I'm curious.
oh, let me go back. Oh, you see?
717 customer service area code. Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Man, that's a hot spot right now. Everything's out of Pennsylvania right now. Everything depends on Pennsylvania, it seems right now. Yeah.
All of them are out of Pennsylvania. I don't
Yeah.
know why, but it's a hot spot.
Yeah. After all the news I watch now, you hear Pennsylvania and it's called the Blue Wall. That's what but yeah. Anyhow, this is not the type of thing that you hear me normally talk about with private label and how to approach finding a brand and whether you're passionate about it or like to be passionate about it. It's more like I mentioned before, it's like sourcing products on the private label side. We do this sometimes with wholesale. Today I didn't do a wholesale one because we have Corey here and I'll let him do his thing if, you know, everything wholesale. But a coach I had a long time ago kind of referred to it as bird song. And it's, at first you go outside and you just hear all the birds and the birds are everywhere. And it's just, those are the birds. But if you study it and if you pick things apart and why it's good and why it's not, eventually you walk out there and you can identify each, just in your normal everyday walks, you start, oh, that's a lark, oh, that's a robin, oh, that, you're able to pick it out immediately. So this was just kind of like the bird song in play. I was shopping for something my son wanted and I saw an opportunity. Had I not been doing this all the time, I would have just passed it up and not looked at it. But this is easy money, guys. If anybody wanted to do this, secretly message me because I want to keep track and give me a deal so I can buy some stuff for my son. But yeah, this is, oh my God, 3D printed. It's 3D printed. Oh my God. This is tempting, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
Those are bullets right there, so they're.
They know nothing. sorry, so I'm sitting on my jaw, but I mean, I'm tempted to get some 3D printers, like, like, yeah. I'll tell you what, if any of you guys know, like, I get the 3D printers and I don't know how to use them, but if you guys know somebody that knows how to use a 3D printer, approach me after this meetup event, and I might get them just to continue this, because this is literally not hard at all.
Year-round thing too, it's not just Christmas.
Yeah, of course, as long as the kids keep being born and, you know, you have a boy or a girl that wants to play with cars.
Well, think about how you could almost like extrapolate this to other similar, not just Hot Wheels, right?
Yep.
Think about, we could create the turns for even like model trains, or like, yeah, like RV car, like there's so many, like, yes, this brand looks to be focused on Hot Wheels compatible, but you could probably take the same 3D printer, the same idea, the same everything, and tweak it for really popular models of you know, model trains and stuff like that. I think there's so much more opportunity here too.
Fernando, do you know 3D printers?
Give me a week.
This is wild, guys. Yeah, I'll tell you what, if I knew 3D printers, you can lease a 3D printer. So there's no excuses here. If you have some knowledge on this, I mean, this is good. And like you said, you know, putting this across other niches. You said Cesar, right? You said Barbie. Yeah, I'm thinking a pink Bugatti, you know, instead of the Corvette or whatever car it is. I don't know, but okay. Well, we got a few more minutes. I just wanted to share that one. I want to get back into the rhythm of sharing like something online as far as picking apart a product that I found. Any questions on that product? Any questions, you know, by anybody else about anything? No? All right, yep.
Can you give an example where my button is?
Where what?
My button? You said the buy,
Oh yeah, the buy box. So when you're looking at a listing, this is the buy box.
So you have to be credited first in order for that to appear?
If it's your listing, or any listing in your FBA, like you're gonna, and best price or matched for best price or close enough, you're gonna be in this buy box. You'll rotate into it, or you'll be the only one. And this is gonna say who it's shipped, like if it's on FBA, it'll be that, the seller name, and this additional information. That's the buy box. But in this case, I seriously doubt there's resellers on here, no. So this is a private label seller. They're the only one on here, but what would be a good example of a,
You go to any shampoo, any deodorant, and you will see a bunch of sellers.
I don't want to click on anybody's ad.
I do the same thing. I don't know why. It's like I'm allergic to sponsored listings. I can never click sponsor.
Yeah, I also feel like it's bad juju almost too, like you're costing another person money that I know I'm not gonna buy. I'm trying to find a name brand shampoo.
Head and Shoulders.
I'll tell you what, I love this. You see, I don't even know, like, I just glanced right now, but, and nothing having to do with the video, but like, this stands out. This orange, you guys hear me talk about sometimes, like, this is almost the same example of that angry orange case study. Anybody here not familiar with the angry orange case study? You are familiar with it? Oh. This is a great one. So let's go here. I want you to see no. So this is a brand that exited. So this is what the brand looked like. This is the packaging of the brand. And they were doing, I don't know, 1 to 3 million in sales with this. So they get acquired by a company to take it over, and they change the packaging to this to stand out. And it tells you the exact number. I want to give you.
And then they use pick-through split test. It looks like.
Yep. The 4-year-old brand bought in about 2 million. It was selling about 2 million in revenue, and they changed it to 23 million. Packaging change. That was it. Did a packaging change. So when I saw this a second ago, you could see some of the similarities in like the orange. So it made me think of that case study. All right. But what was, did that help? Oh, I was looking for someone to show you a buy box with other resellers on it. That's what it was. Why am I not seeing it? It shows you how good private label's doing, right? Because like, where are they?
Carlos, an example I like to show for like reseller friendly listings is any really like head and shoulder multi-pack or any like Colgate toothpaste multi-packs, almost always going to be on there. I think that one might be sold on Amazon, but
Well, I got 3. So here you go. You see it right here. You got it?
Yes,
Yeah. All right.
And everything affects your buy box, even your reviews,
Yep.
any violation your account has, how much you've sold in that item, how many items you sell, even your inventory. So if there's one thing that happened to me during the summer, I saw these fans and they do really well, and then I got stuck at selling the X amount, and I didn't realize that you also have a cap on your account. So you can go into your settings, and let's say your settings is only set up to sell 300 items a day. When you hit that setting, it takes you off of all the sales. So that's another thing that you can go in and modify as well. So if you're selling 300 items a day and you're set up to only sell 300, Amazon won't sell you $1 anymore, even if you have the buy box. So these are some of the things that you start to learn. Huh?
for FBM or
Yeah, for FBM.
FBA too.
FBM, M.
Oh, okay, got it.
I'm now transitioning into FBM. I'm more like FBM type of guy.
Okay, that makes sense. I
But
didn't know.
yeah, there's a limit. Maybe you
Where,
can-
where do you
I mean,
see
if
that?
they-
If you go in your settings, in your account settings,
Okay.
in the same area where you adjust like the shipping for 0 days and multiple
Okay.
things, it's
So
in there. And you can raise
Yeah.
the units, because the idea is that they don't wanna give you more work than you can handle. So if you have only 1 day of handling or 2 days of handling, they're not gonna give you more than 200. I think 200 is the standard that they start your account with. So anytime you go above 200 units a day, you won't sell anymore unless you go adjust that.
Okay. This is for FBM.
FBM, correct. Yeah, because FBA, they can send as many, 1,000,000 units, right, because they have the manpower. But as an FBM, since you have to do the work, they just have it set up to have a maximum pay rate.
Yeah, guys. So just to recap, this is the product. We answered some good questions. I'm about to announce Corey to come on. I got his slides already loaded up. So, yeah. Yeah. And we covered this listing, which was the discovery. I know Bruce, Tom, we've talked about this for a few weeks now at the breakfast, but I bought this one. I meant to bring it, and I forgot. I needed to sneak it away when my son wasn't looking, and I don't think he would. Wow, a little overdressed, huh? Fancy. So I actually ordered it, and we discovered here that this is a 3D printed product made in the USA, but I received it, and it makes sense now reading that, because this is it's a black shoelace. I mean, it still has the tips on the end of it. It's a shoelace. It is a shoelace. There's no instructions. It comes in a Ziploc bag without the zip, folded, taped. That's what it comes in, and calculated about 26,000 in sales that this brand is doing. I would estimate about a 200% profit margin. So, yeah. So we discovered that right now, like when we were looking at the bullets. It's 3D printed, made in the USA. I've already quickly DM'd Fernando to see if he knows 3D printing. And
PLA is the filament that they use.
Yeah.
It's kind of like almost like a fishing wire string.
Yeah.
PLA filament.
yeah, this would be very easy to do.
Give us 3 things that you would do to instantly make that a better listing, other than the
Care about it. Like there's no care here. No, I would. This is a gold mine for video and UGC content and these secondary images. I mean, this is a waste. I mean, this is. Look at this. This is one image. This can all be accomplished in one image. I would borrow a GoPro and set this trap. I mean, what you could accomplish with this and a little GoPro on some videos would just suck you in. I would get great images set up. I'm surprised they don't get negatives here because this doesn't come with a track. This is all that's inside of this thing. It doesn't come with any. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nobody reads, so like I'm surprised they haven't been hit kind of hard on this. I would get great images. I like, you notice here they have, you notice how they have the compatible first here, compatible with Hot Wheels, but that other listing they were doing really good on, and it says Hot Wheels first compatible in the start of the title. I would attempt to do that first. If I can get away with Hot Wheels compatible, and my first 2 words on the listing can be Hot Wheels, I'm doing that. I'm changing this to variations, like some quantities, 3-pack, 6-pack, 12-pack. I mean, what I bought was 1 turn. Nobody needs 1 turn. How do you turn back? So I would get that. I like the orange and the blue colors. I would immediately start thinking about how to, using the 3D printer thing, like what are the other niches where this can be done? Cesar, you threw out there Barbie. I imagine Barbie compatible would be pretty wild.
I would get some inexpensive packaging from China to really make it look good. So you probably get a bag with a handhold and a Ziploc to it to put that in. Probably looking at 12 cents a bag.
Yeah.
The reality is, image number 2 has to be the unique selling proposition of the product, and that is a little boy looking at that thing going down the slide with a happy face, going like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever."
Yeah, look, there's no.
Image number 2, you're losing 3% conversion rate right there.
There's no.
Like the image of the kid with it overneath the mom's stove, the mom freaking out, and him just.
Yeah. There's no people.
Immediately 3% conversion.
There's no people showing up here. And to Corey's point, this is an iPhone. Actually, it's so bad it's probably a Samsung. Right? This is, I mean, so Care would be the biggest one. Just actually give back. If this can be pulled off, which it can be with a 3D printer, and somebody comes up to me, Fernando has access to a 3D printer, we might do this one, because this wouldn't take much of my time at all to do. We may just do this as a project, and whatever it makes every quarter, we'll just have a little party.
I'm
Like,
actually thinking as a wholesaler, if you put 2-pack, 3-pack, 4-pack, all of these to
yeah,
create the premium is gonna go down.
absolutely.
It's gonna be-
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let me know, Fernando. All right. All right, we're going to switch. Fernando, you're going to look at the audio. Corey, you ready? I'll open it from the package now. Yeah. Let me pull up the... You sent it to me again?
Let's see, I shared it with you. It should be that one.
Okay. Oh, so this works.
Yeah, it's a little different format.
You want to go to the other one then?
No, this is fine. It should be fine. Same content, same everything, just different background color.
So, let me see.
If you just do slideshow, yeah, it should be good.
Oh, so you just click down here?
Yeah.
All right. Let me get you a little lanyard real quick and.
You about the same size?
Yeah.
How tall are you? 6'4"? 5"?
Yeah, right at 6'5", yeah. Sorry, my wrists are broke. Jeez. There you go. Should put it around your neck.
Perfect.
All right, so today we're going to talk about wholesale. I mentioned for those who weren't here in the beginning, Corey's a real deal wholesaler or entrepreneur, e-commerce seller. Pretty much anybody I know who's a real deal is vouch for this guy. He's on the podcast. The podcast did phenomenal. Not only is he a seller, but he also is really good at teaching, which I'm sure you'll get into a little bit of that.
Yep.
So, like I ask you guys all the time, I think for some of you this is the first time with a speaker here, since we moved to this location, try to stump him. Ask him really hard questions. That's what we try to do, so the speaker
Yep.
can learn, because he's totally open to learning, and so that we can maximize the time we have for Corey, so thank you.
Well, first of all, Carlos, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. Like he said, I was on the I guess we got connected through, I think SellerSnap introduced us, right? Yeah, so, which is a repricer I'd mentioned earlier, that's the one I use. They'd put me and Carlos in touch probably 2-3 months ago, and he had me on the podcast. So if you guys want to check out that episode, I don't know what the episode number is, but it's from 2 to 3 months ago. Do you have that episode number handy, the one that we did together?
I'll pull it
Yeah.
up and share it.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great. And so he obviously asked me to come down here and talk wholesale with you guys, so that's what I'm here to do today. So like he said, any questions are fair game. I like to think I'm an open book almost to a fault, to where it's come back to bite me at some points. So if you get, like, with that said, any questions you guys have, nothing's off limits, right? So ask away, and I'll do my best to answer. So really the topic of today's conversation is Wholesale 101, how to start, how to scale, not just a wholesale business, but a profitable wholesale business, because there's a big difference between having a business and having one that's profitable. So we're gonna get into, there's a few different parts of the presentation. We're gonna talk foundation. We're gonna talk, I've got a few tips towards the end about how to negotiate, how to get better pricing on wholesale orders. So there's a lot to get through. But like I said, as you guys have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to pause, raise your hand, we'll call on you and get those answered. So really, before we get into it, and this is more so for my curiosity than anything else, I wanna kind of gauge the experience level of the room. I'd say raise your hand if you've been selling, or I guess let's start this way. Raise your hand if you've never sold anything on Amazon. If you're brand new, you're here kind of just curious. Okay, so we got about 2 people. Raise your hand if you've been selling for less than a year. Okay, so one more. What about less than 3 years?
Oh, Amazon?
Yeah, I'd say Amazon specifically. Okay. What about 5 years? Okay. What about 10? Anybody been selling for 10 years or more? You? Okay. So I know Carlos as well. I've been selling for about almost 7.5 years. So, and we'll get into my background in a second, but I graduated from college on May 20th, 2017. And May 22nd is when I hit every thrift store in my town, and I started with used books. That's kind of how I thought I was going to get into the Amazon game. And that is how I got my start. And we'll get into my story here in a second. But I just was curious as to the experience level of the room, because obviously this is going to be geared more towards those that are newer to wholesale. But even for those that are experienced in the Amazon space, I think you'll still take away quite a bit. So, oops, I think I got to click here. All right, so again, before we get started, who the heck am I? I'm going to do a quick background and just tell you guys why it is I'm qualified to have this conversation and to tell you guys some of these things. So again, my name's Corey Ganim. I'm 29 years old. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm here for the day. I'm going to be leaving here in a few hours, so I'll be hanging out for 30 minutes to an hour or so after the presentation. So if you have any questions that maybe you want to ask in private, or you just don't feel comfortable asking them here in a public setting, just come find me after this, no problem. And I've sold over $12 million on Amazon, all brand name products, so no private label, never created my own brand, never done anything like that. So Carlos knows 1,000 times more than me when it comes to brand building and marketing and that type of stuff on Amazon. But I know a thing or two when it comes to wholesale, when it comes to pitching brands on why they should sell to me, pitching distributors on why they should open an account with me. And like I said, over my 7-year Amazon selling career, I've been doing wholesale for about 5.5 of those 7 years. And in that 5.5 year span, that's when I sold about $12 million worth of brand name products with the wholesale model. So I started my career, I guess, as a young person in my 20s. I started by working at IBM. So I was doing data storage sales. And this is not even like, we were selling hardware, right? Not even software. So needless to say, it wasn't a very fun position to be in. I couldn't even tell you what I was selling. Like, if you asked me to say, hey, what is our top product and how does it work? I would have been like, I don't know. So needless to say, I didn't do very well there. Somehow lasted 2 years there. But it was at that 2-year mark, which was July of 2019, that I quit that job. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I just threw all my stuff in a Penske truck, drove it back to North Carolina, which is where I'm from, dropped it off at my mom's house, moved in there for a few months to try to get Amazon off the ground. And so at the time, I'd been doing wholesale since January of 2019. So when I quit my job at IBM, I'd been doing wholesale specifically for like 6 or 7 months, if that. And wasn't making that much money from it. Was making maybe a couple $100 a month in profit. So to say that I quit my job as a 23, 24-year-old kid making good money working for a good company to kind of just take a chance on this business. Some people think it was risky. I personally don't think it was that risky because if it failed and completely went flat, so I'm still 24 and I have marketable skills that I would have learned from that venture that I could then go to pitch a new company and try to get a new job. So that is kind of how I transitioned from corporate into the full-time Amazon space. And again, wasn't making much money at the time, so didn't really have any business doing that, but here we are. And then since, I guess, about beginning of 2023, so beginning of 2023 is when I started creating content. I started tweeting on Twitter specifically. I'm gonna try to get out of the way so you guys can see. But I started tweeting, I started posting on Instagram, I started posting on YouTube, LinkedIn, like every platform you could possibly be on is where I started creating content. So ever since then, I guess beginning of 2023, so coming up on 2 years now is when I started teaching people and educating them and helping them start, scale, and manage their wholesale businesses. I've helped, at last count, about 941 people through our Wholesale Challenge program, which is geared towards newer wholesale sellers, and then have since helped, the number's well over 96 now, but well over 100 people scale their wholesale business within our wholesale network community, which is geared towards sellers in that scaling phase. And then last point about me, I promise I'll shut up about me because it's not about me, it's about wholesale. So lastly, like I said, I'm sharing my journey on YouTube. Really the most active on Twitter and YouTube, I would say, but also on Instagram and LinkedIn and everywhere else you can find me. And if you follow me on any of those platforms, you're gonna see daily, probably multiple times per day, information about wholesale, about selling on Amazon, about entrepreneurship, all that good stuff. All right, so again, that's enough about me. Let's talk about the foundation of a wholesale business, right? Because one of the points that I mentioned earlier is you can have a wholesale business, anybody can have a wholesale business, but it's one thing to have a wholesale business, it's an entirely separate thing to have one that's profitable, one that's set up on a strong foundation, one that has systems in place, one that has processes, versus one where you're just flying by the seat of your pants, putting out fires left and right, and trying to kind of manage everything day by day, which is what I did for probably the first 3 to 4 years before I really found some good team members, put some good systems in place, and kind of created these foundational frameworks that I'm going to teach you guys today. So when it comes to creating the foundation of your wholesale business, really this whole process that I'm about to lay out takes maybe 1 to 2 hours of effort from step 1 through step 8, which I'll get into here shortly. But again, those 1 to 2 hours, yes, it's boring work. Yes, a lot of it's just like filing documents with the state or setting up bank accounts and doing this boring stuff. But guys, these are the tasks, these are the things that are gonna set you up for that long-term success. And the good news is if you're already doing wholesale, if you're already selling on Amazon, it's not too late to set up this foundation. This is one of those things where just the earlier you do it, the better, right? So no big deal if you're already into the game and you haven't done these things. The moral of the story is just get these things done as quickly as possible if you're in that position. So like I said, 8 steps in the process. The first step, and again, this is specific to a wholesale business, all right? So I'm only speaking from which I have experience, which is with wholesale specifically. Now, first thing, legal entity, right? You're gonna need a legal entity of some sort for suppliers and brands and distributors to even want to take your call. Because again, the suppliers that I deal with, they're all 100% B2B, business to business. They will not return my email, they will not return my call, they won't entertain me if I show up in public unless I have a legitimate business. And so this is not legal advice, this is not accounting advice, but for 99% of people, that's gonna be an LLC of some sort. And I highly encourage, talk to your attorney, talk to your accountant, talk to whoever it is that's advising you to find out what structure is gonna be best for you. But again, for me, that was an LLC, and it was as simple as using a service like a LegalZoom that can get you set up in a matter of days for like a couple $100. But in every state, like I said, I'm set up in North Carolina. I think it's just as easy down here in Florida, being a very pro-business state. You can just go onto your Secretary of State's website, submit an application for a new LLC. Most states let you do it online, and then you're done. And it takes like 5 minutes. So that's first step, is getting that legal entity set up. Second step is getting your EIN number. So your EIN number, for those of you guys that aren't familiar with that term, think of it as the social security number of your business. So as individuals, we have social security numbers. As businesses, we have EIN numbers. And so what an EIN number allows you to do is, again, this is one of the pieces of the pie that you need in order to open accounts with wholesale distributors that sell to businesses. And also, you can't proceed to step 3 until you've completed step 2. So once you have that EIN number, which by the way, you can get for free in 60 seconds by Google searching EIN IRS and just find the result for the IRS website. It is a 60-second application where you just fill in your company name, your information, the industry that you're in, and at the end of the application, it'll literally pop out an EIN number, and there you have it. So never pay a service like a LegalZoom or anybody else to get this for you, because when I formed my Amazon entity, again, the wholesale entity 5.5 years ago, I paid LegalZoom like $200 for this, and I found out you don't have to do that, so don't do it. Next step, EIN number comes before step 4, I think. But step 3 is also critical, which is obviously having an Amazon seller account. We need an account with which we can register with Amazon and start to sell products. There's 2 plans, right? There's the individual, and then there's the professional. The professional plan costs, I think, $40 a month, but this is going to be 100% critical. If you're serious about selling on Amazon, you've got to have the professional plan. And somebody said earlier, I think one of you guys asking about buy box percentage, right? Buy box share. Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, but the professional, I know that if you're on the individual plan, you're not buy box eligible for, I don't know if it's for certain fulfillment methods or for certain products, but bottom line, professional plan's critical. $40 a month, it'll pay for itself in a matter of days once you get up and running. All right, step 4 is to have a professional email address. Now, this is not like a 100%, you've got to have this before you do anything, but it is going to drastically increase your conversion and your close rate with new suppliers. Because think about it this way, right? If I'm a wholesale supplier and I get an email from Corey1995@gmail.com, it could be the most professional, well-worded, concise email ever, but just by seeing that Gmail address, I'm like, this guy can't be legit, right? He's telling me he's ready to spend, $10,000 on a purchase order, but he's using a Gmail email address. Like, that doesn't check out. So again, this is one of those things where I'm not going to say like you can't move forward without it, but like do yourself a favor. It's $7, I think, a month for Google Workspace. It's as simple as buying a domain on something like a Squarespace and then getting your Google email set up through Squarespace. Again, talking less than $10 a month to drastically increase your credibility and drastically increase your response rates from suppliers by having that professional email address. Next, and so this is what I meant when I said an EIN number is required for this step. So step 5 would be establishing a business bank account with a bank in your area, right? So in order to open a business bank account, one of the things the bank is going to ask for is your EIN number, because again, it's essentially the social security number for your business. So when you go to open that business bank account, I personally prefer to deal with local or regional banks or credit unions. I bank with a regional bank in North Carolina. They only serve Eastern North Carolina. I've got a line of credit with them. I've got multiple accounts with them, and they're fantastic to work with. And I can text my banker or my loan officer to get information, right? Whereas if you work with a Chase or if you work with a Wells Fargo, there's nothing wrong with that. I know plenty of Amazon sellers that bank with the big banks. But just in my experience, when you go to try to get a line of credit or a loan from, let's say, like a Chase or a Wells Fargo type of bank, unless you fit into the box, like the perfect mold of the borrower that they're looking for, it's just going to be a harder sell to them. They don't really understand e-commerce. They don't understand what we're doing as Amazon sellers. Like I said, in my experience, I've just found it a little easier to work with and borrow from local or regional banks or credit unions. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to who to bank with. Now, we'll kind of rush through steps 6, 7, and 8, but step 6, again, is one that's not 100% essential. Like, this is not you have to have this done by day 1, but as someone who earns a lot of credit card points, a lot of cash back, and able to travel to a lot of places because of the spend that I do within my Amazon business, having a really strong business credit card, one that provides either lots of cash back or just lots of points, is going to be a huge perk. And the ones that I recommend, so I use the Capital One Spark, which is unlimited 2% cash back, or I like to use the Chase Inc. Business Premier, which is also unlimited 2% cash back, but it's unlimited 2.5% cash back on any transaction over $5,000. So in my business, everything, all the inventory we're buying, rarely is it under 5,000. So you guys, you'd be shocked how much that extra 0.5% adds up when getting cash back. So that's my favorite option by far, the Chase Inc. Business Premier Card, 2.5% cash back on transactions over $5,000. And guys, again, at scale, we're talking, 2%, 2.5%, that can't be much, but at scale, in my business at least, that puts an extra $30,000 to $50,000 cash, tax-free cash in my pocket every year just from the money that we're spending on inventory. And I'm not even that big of a seller, right? I know guys that do 8 figures per year with wholesale who, no exaggeration, put $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 in tax-free cash back in their personal pocket from these credit cards, from spending money on inventory on credit cards. Obviously, we want to do so responsibly, but these are one of those things that if you're spending responsibly on a credit card, you should be able to stack lots of points and lots of cash back really quickly. All right, so step 7, this is kind of 4 mini steps broken down into one, but these are just going to be the 4 key software tools that you need from day one, at least that I recommend you have from day one. And now, Carlos and I kind of subscribe to the same belief where it's, especially when you're talking to newer sellers or people that are newer to the wholesale model, the last thing I want to do is tell somebody, hey, go load up on 15 different software tools, right? Because in reality, as a newer seller, somebody who's newer to this business, there's only a few tools you need, and really, the more you can slim down your software stack, the better until you start to get momentum in your business. So the 4 that I recommend that are critical for even brand new sellers, 1 would be Keepa. This is non-negotiable, not up for debate. You must have Keepa as a wholesale seller. You cannot run the business without it. 2 would be Smart Scout, because with my model, what I teach and what I execute, I use Smart Scout to find all of the brands that I contact, and then I let those brands lead me to the distributors that I contact, which we'll discuss that method here in a bit, but Smart Scout's gonna be critical. And then the last 2, the third being Boxem. I prefer a third-party tool to create my FBA shipments just because those of you guys that work in Seller Central that try to create those shipments in Seller Central, it is a freaking nightmare, like especially for a newer seller. If I was brand new to selling on Amazon and you told me to go create a shipment in Seller Central, I might quit on the spot. Like personally, I think it's that difficult. Some people are a lot smarter than me, but I think Boxem's a better alternative than creating those shipments in Seller Central. And then lastly, and this is kind of like an eventually, right? This is not a requirement from day one, but one of the things that Carlos and I have mentioned a couple of times today is having a good repricer. The one that we use is called Seller Snap. It is not a cheap tool. It's $500 per month, but this is one of those tools that at scale, which is why I have in parentheses eventually, pays for itself in a matter of days, because at least for us, we'll make consistent sales above the buy box price. So it ends up paying for itself pretty easily. And then lastly, guys, step 8, when it comes to the business foundation process for your wholesale business, is going to be to obtain a resale certificate in the state that you're shipping to. All right, so that last part's key, the state that you're shipping to. So my business, we are established in the state of North Carolina. So we have a resale certificate for the state of North Carolina because that's where we're based. However, our primary prep center is actually located in New York. So when we buy from suppliers, they want a resale certificate in your ship to state. So again, if we're shipping mainly to New York, we're buying from a new supplier, they're gonna say, hey, send me over your New York resale certificate. Now, without getting too much into the weeds on how do you get these resale certificates, what do you need to do, where do you register, the state of New York just so happens to be one where you don't have to register with that state. You can have an out-of-state resale number, again, which I do in North Carolina, and still obtain a New York State resale certificate. So again, I don't want to go too into the weeds here. It's not my area of expertise specifically, but just know that obtaining a resale certificate is as simple as registering with your state Department of Revenue as a retail business. And that resale certificate is what is going to allow you to buy wholesale inventory sales tax free. Because we don't pay sales tax as the retailer, our customers pay the sales tax. It wouldn't be fair if the government's getting sales tax from us when we buy wholesale and they're getting it again when customers buy from us at retail. So as long as you have that resale certificate, your customer pays the sales tax, Amazon then takes that sales tax and pushes it to the state for you so you don't have to do anything else. Go ahead.
Question.
Yep.
So if you're based
Mhm.
aren't you buying it from your North Carolina company, so you really only need that resale tax certificate from North Carolina, not necessarily where your 3PL is located?
So that's a good question, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how the law works, but the way it's been explained to me and every supplier that I've ever dealt with, at least the ones that are organized and that try to keep this documentation, as far as I understand, the law is they want a resale certificate for the ship to state, right? Sometimes they'll ask for our North Carolina one too, just because that's where we're headquartered. But again, I don't know the right answer.
Yeah, I think the law goes into what they call the nexus, so where the sale is actually generated from. So I don't know if that's where I guess you're just making sure that you CYA yourself, because the sale really is generated from you in North Carolina, but even though the product generates and is sold from your 3PL, that's why that nexus is what they're talking about.
That makes sense. And again, not to get too deep into like the sales tax weeds, but guys, it is so much easier today than it was even 2 or 3 years ago. I know you've been around, Carlos, when this was a thing, but guys, so in 2024, Amazon will collect and remit sales tax on behalf of every state in the United States, right? All 50 states. We no longer have to worry about, well, which states do I have Nexus? Which states do I not have Nexus? Which state do I need to register? Which state do I not need to register? 3 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? 3 years ago, Amazon would collect and remit sales tax on behalf of some states, but not all of them. So when I say this was a nightmare, I had to register with the Missouri State Department of Revenue, the Kansas State Department of Revenue, the Illinois, and like each one of them I had to file quarterly, one of them I had to file monthly, one of them was yearly, and it's like, this is just crazy. Last week, I got a tax bill from the state of Missouri from 2021 for like $40 because we had registered there and I guess we didn't submit our return on time, and like that's the type of stuff you had to deal with back a couple of years ago. So
To be redundant on this, but
yeah.
your resale tax certificate that you're putting into your Amazon account is what? The North Carolina one or your New York one?
So we've never.
In your tax settings,
Mhm.
you have to pick the state that you're, I guess, getting the nexus from. So which one do you choose?
North Carolina for sure. Yeah, because, and also when you think about it that way too, we use different prep centers. Our main one's in New York. We've got one in Oregon as well. But for the tax questionnaire that Amazon makes you fill out in Seller Central, that needs to align with your established business information, right? And it's the same reason why when you go to submit an invoice to Amazon, either for ungating or to beat an authenticity complaint or anything like that, the only thing Amazon's paying attention to, well, not the only thing, but the only thing when it comes to your address is, does the billing information on your invoice match the business information in your Seller Central account, right? That ship to address on your invoice can be whatever, but as long as it matches the business information in your Amazon account, you'll be good on that front.
Corey,
Yep.
we got a question from Courtney.
Yeah.
Says, hi Carlos, I need some help with a reseller product. Hijacker took over listings selling counterfeit items, kicking all sellers off listing. It was resolved a few months ago with transparency codes, but prior to that happening, she had 90% of the buy box for the hijacker. Now, can't get more than 10%. They've been selling the product for 5 years, maintain ample stock, obey MAP pricing, and there's a bunch of repeat sellers on there. What can I do to increase buy box percentage?
So that's a good question. So if there's a MAP policy on the list, or I guess if the brand has a MAP policy in place for that specific product, there's really not a whole lot that can be done, because if everybody's at MAP, and just to kind of explain to the folks in the room what MAP means if you're not familiar with that term. So MAP stands for minimum advertised price, and that is a policy that a lot of brands will implement. Basically, to give you guys an example, Mattel, I don't know who manufactures this, but Mattel might say, hey Corey, if you're gonna sell this product on Amazon, you cannot price it below $19.99. If you price this product below $19.99, you're in violation of our policy, and we have every right to terminate your agreement or to no longer sell to you or do whatever we want to do. So again, in this case, with Courtney's, she's on a listing where there is a MAP policy in place, meaning Courtney has to price at, let's say, $19.99, and every other seller on the listing also has to price at $19.99. So she doesn't really have many levers that she can pull to get more buy box, because again, if price and fulfillment method are the two biggest factors that determine how much buy box you get, well, if you take one of those factors out of the equation, being price, because everybody's got a price at the same price, if she's FBA, then there's really nothing else she can do to increase her buy box percentage on that listing that I'm aware of, right? could do things like throwing a coupon on the ASIN, but I guess technically that would be violating MAP because she'd be selling it below the agreed price. So yeah, there's not much that can be done there. Do you have anything in mind as far as any levers that could be pulled? Yeah, I don't think so either. So, but I mean, transparency is a step in the right direction, especially if counterfeiting was a big issue there. Really, the only thing that could be done is go back to that brand and find out why do they have so many resellers. Can we slim down that number of resellers and only keep Courtney, ideally just Courtney, or worst case Courtney and a small handful of others, so that way the listing makes the same amount of sales, but now it's split between fewer people. That's really the only option I can think of. All right. So let's get a little tactical, right? I want to share some tips these are strategies that I use every single day, my team uses every single day, specifically for finding suppliers. Oops. All right, so in 2024, it's my firm belief, and I think a lot of other people that are doing wholesale would agree with me, that at least the safest way to do wholesale is working directly with brands. All right, buying directly from brands, getting invoices directly from the brand. And that's not to say that buying through authorized distributors doesn't work. We do a ton of that. However, you guys have probably seen a lot of the account deactivations and a lot of the Section 3 reviews and a lot of the brand reviews and just a lot of the nonsense that Amazon is throwing at us as sellers in 2024. It just seems to me that, and from what I've been told by other higher level sellers and even some folks at Amazon, that they really are just pushing the platform to be more brand friendly and also just to be more professional in the sense that Amazon wants you to either be the brand or be buying to as close to the brand as possible. So the more you can work directly with the brands, the more you can become an authorized retailer of the brands under their supervision where they know who you are and you've got a letter of authorization from the brand. That's going to be your best case scenario. Now, when it comes to finding these brands, right, because there's tens of thousands of reseller-friendly brands that would work with you even if you're a new seller, because that's a huge limiting belief that some people have is, well, I'm a new seller, I'm new to wholesale, why would a brand want to work with me? I promise you, there's tens of thousands of brands that would, but let's talk about how we find them. So the tool that I mentioned earlier, guys, is called Smart Scout. And again, my goal here is not to load you up with a bunch of different software tools, but I promise you, this is the one, not the one, but this is one that will drastically reduce your workload in terms of finding these brands. This can be done, what I'm about to tell you can be done manually on Amazon, going page by page, using a free Chrome extension called DS Amazon Quick View, throwing stuff into Google Sheets, and doing the whole manual method, but this is just much easier, I promise you. Now, and I'm going to lay out a couple of these bullet points and then touch on them one by one. So within Smart Scout, it's got a bunch of different features, but there are 4 in particular that I use to find probably 99% of the brands that either I've contacted or that I currently carry. So within Smart Scout, there's a tool called Brands, where my strategy within that tool is you can click on the Brands tool, you can choose a primary category. So for example, I might choose automotive as my primary category. And then I'm just going to hit filter. And what that's going to do is that's going to show me every single brand in the entire automotive category. And there might be 35,000 brands, right? Sometimes even more. So all right, I've got 35,000 brands. Obviously, not all of these are going to be qualified. Obviously, we're going to have to, filter out the ones that are dominated by Amazon or they're the big mega brands owned by conglomerates, because we don't have a very good chance of opening a direct account with like a Castrol, or I'm trying to think of like a huge automotive brand. So again, we've got our 35,000 brands within this brands tool, and then we can set some very simple filters at the column level to take that 35,000 down to 150 or 200 and get a very, very filtered, a very specific list, a very targeted list of brands with which to contact. And as far as like which filters to set and kind of how to approach this, I'm going to share a resource, and it's in 1 or 2 slides. It's a QR code to a YouTube video where I break this method down on YouTube. So just hang tight. You don't have to take a ton of notes because I'm going to share that link with you guys, and it'll help quite a bit. Now, the second tool that we use within Smart Scout is called the subcategories tool. So it's similar to the brands tool,
except for the fact that instead of looking for like starting with the brand, we're going to start with the subcategory, or what I like to call the niche. And if any of you guys watching this or any of you guys here in this room have ever like heard me or listened to my content or paid attention to anything that I've had to say, one of the things I talk about the most is the riches are in the niches, going niche, mastering a niche, and really just becoming knowledgeable about those products and about that category. And the subcategories tool, in my experience, is the easiest way to do that. So to use that same example that I used earlier, automotive, within the subcategories tool, you can choose the automotive category, and then you can kind of drill down into that main category and look at all of the subcategories within automotive. So there's probably 5,000 to 10,000 subcategories within each main category. And what this method entails is just drilling in subcategory by subcategory and looking for those diamonds in the rough, those brands that maybe you're only selling 5, 10, 20,000 per month on Amazon, but there's so much less competition for those brands than there are for some of these mega brands like a Colgate or like a Palmolive or like a, Head and Shoulders, right? So that's really kind of the crux of what I teach is like let's focus on these small to mid-sized niche brands and in a category that's not quite as sexy, as opposed to chasing after these brands and these listings that are selling tens of thousands of units a month. Because while yes, those are still profitable and you can make a lot of money selling those products, this is just way easier. Now, third would be using the seller map tool within SmartScout, which again it's basically one big interactive map, and you can zoom in, you can zoom out. The method that I like to use with the seller map tool is, like I said, I live in North Carolina. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So what I like to do is I like to look at the seller map. I like to zoom in on my address. And then what you can do within SmartScout is you can filter to say, show me the resellers in my vicinity, right? And you can say, show me 100, show me 10,000, show me 25,000. So I like to see, all right, show me as many people around me as possible. So I'll zoom into my area. It'll show me, it's basically like a Google map where it's showing a bunch of like pins and dots. And so what I'll do there is I'll start clicking on these different dots to see, oh, that guy, he's a 7-figure musical instrument wholesale seller and he lives like 1.5 miles down the street from me, right? And the idea is not so much like, I don't really care who's around me, but I want to see who around me is doing wholesale so that I can steal their suppliers. Because chances are a lot of these guys are buying from local suppliers, local distributors. So what I've had a lot of luck doing is doing exactly what I just said. I'll zoom in on Charlotte, North Carolina. I'll look for some resellers in my area, and I'll look for some guys that are doing maybe grocery mainly, right? So I'll drill into their storefront. I'm like, these guys are selling grocery. They're in my area. They're definitely a wholesale seller. So they're probably buying these grocery products from a local grocery distributor. So then I'll take whatever brands they're selling, and then I will Google search Charlotte, North Carolina, brand, let's just say Goldfish distributor, right? And then I might have to do some digging through those Google search results, but guys, there have been so many instances where I will do that. I will find a local supplier, I will open an account with them, I will see their pricing, and I'm like, I guarantee you, this is the supplier that guy was buying from. And you would be shocked how often this turns into good opportunities. And again, you're just stealing the leads that people have already found. So it's like, let's let them do the legwork and let's capitalize on it. And again, I use Charlotte as an example. I don't have to stick to my city. If I stick regionally, right? If I just look at North Carolina, even South Carolina, even Georgia or Virginia, chances are a lot of these guys are buying from regional distributors that, again, I also could probably access. And then lastly, and I swear, guys, this is not a SmartScout ad. This is like truly how I do this. It just happens to be the tool that we use. But lastly would be the sellers tool within SmartScout, which a lot of you might have heard of the storefront stalking method, especially if you've ever done arbitrage. If you've done mainly private label, it's probably not as relevant. But the sellers tool within SmartScout allows you to plug in the storefront name of any seller on Amazon, and it'll show you every brand they carry, every ASIN they carry. It'll show you the estimated revenue that they're producing at the brand level, at the ASIN level, et cetera. So one of my favorite tools, and you can use this exact example, I did this yesterday. So there's a mega seller in the tools category, and his storefront name is JB Tools. They're like $100 million a year tool seller on Amazon, JB Tools. So what I did is I took the name JB Tools and I plugged it into the seller's tool in Smart Scout, and it showed me every brand that JB Tools is carrying. It was like 350 different brands. Now, I saw that they were selling $1 million per month of just DeWalt, right? DeWalt, huge tool brand, $1 million a month of just that brand. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, JB Tools probably has so much buying power. They probably got multiple warehouses. They're just a huge operation. So they might be buying directly from DeWalt, they might not be, but why would I go and try and compete with them on these mega brands that they can outspend me, meaning they're getting better pricing, they're getting better terms. I don't want to play in that sandbox, right? So what I did is I sorted all the brands they carry by revenue, but instead of looking at the highest revenue first, I want to see, well, what are the smaller brands that they're carrying? What brands have they identified that are maybe a little more low key, that a smaller seller like me or a newer seller kind of just coming up could go after and could land those accounts. And so what I did is I sorted to see the smallest revenue first, and I identified there was like 20 to 30 brands in the like 5 to 15K per month range that JB Tools is selling. So what I did is I exported that to an Excel. I've got my Excel. I looked up the website for each of those brands, and I cold called all of those brands. And so far, I've landed 2 accounts, and one of them is looking very profitable. So one of them is looking like we're going to place an order with. But again, it all came from the premise of JB Tools has done the work. He's found 350 brands that are profitable, and I think they're profitable because why would he be selling them if they weren't? So let's just steal his leads, right? Like, that's kind of the idea here. And again, you can apply that to any category, any seller, any niche, and the amount of leads you're going to find is not in the hundreds, it's not in the thousands, it's in the tens of thousands after you've done this for a long enough time. And that's not an exaggeration. And in a second, I don't know if it's the next slide, one of the following slides, I'm going to give you my criteria that I use to determine, okay, what does a good brand actually look like? And I think that might be one of the more valuable parts of the presentation. Oh, so this is the video I promised. So guys, for those of you here locally, if you can scan this QR code, the link should work. If it doesn't, for some reason, let me know. But this, I believe, will just take you to one of my YouTube videos, obviously completely free, showing the brand research process step by step. And I've got like 6 or 7 videos just like this one. So if you like this video and you want more, 1, subscribe to my channel, but 2, you can literally just search on YouTube, Corey Ganim Smart Scout, and I've got 6 or 7 videos. It's not working? Damn, all right. I'll get you guys a link, I promise.
What's the URL so I can put it in the...
If you YouTube search Corey Ganim Smart Scout, it'll be any of the 6 or 7 that pop up you can share. Sorry about that, guys. This is an old version of this presentation, which is why I wasn't sure if it would work. All right, so we'll go to the next here. All right, so let's touch on distributors, okay? Because up to this point, we've talked about brands, we've talked about going directly to brands. It's the safest way to do wholesale. They know who you are, you know who they are. It's just a good way to do business. Now, with that said, as a wholesale seller, we can't disregard the fact that we're also buying a lot of inventory from distributors. And I define a distributor as a company who is selling multiple different brands, who doesn't necessarily own any of those brands, but they're selling those to retailers like me and like you guys, and they're authorized by the brands they carry, right? That's the key. Because what you'll find is there are a lot of quote-unquote distributors out there who are just essentially kind of like casual wholesalers. They're not authorized by the brands they carry. They've kind of just inserted themselves into the supply chain, found a good deal, and now they're looking to flip it to somebody else. So I'd be lying if I said I've never bought from distributors like that before, but that was much safer 2 or 3 years ago when Amazon wasn't as stringent about their supply chain requirements. Nowadays in 2024, I can never with a good conscience advise anybody to buy from somebody who either is it the brand themselves or is buying directly from the brand. So if you're gonna do wholesale, if you're gonna do it seriously, please, please, please make sure you're buying from authorized, legitimate distributors who are in turn buying directly from the brand.
How do you know? How do you tell them apart?
I ask them. Either I'll ask the distributor, I'll say, hey, are you guys buying this directly from the manufacturer? And if they're legitimate, they'll tell you. Sometimes they'll dance around the question.
Non-legitimate ones will just also say, oh yeah, we have
That's true, but in that case, so that's happened to me at a trade show where I asked them that. I said, hey, are you guys authorized by Procter & Gamble? And they're like, we buy directly from them. I said, great, no problem. I'm just gonna step away and give P&G a quick call and just confirm, and if we're good to go, then I'll stop back by the booth and place an order. And they're like, oh, well, then they kind of like freeze up and like, don't do that. But a lot of times just by calling their bluff and saying, well, okay, I'm just gonna give them a call and confirm, and once I confirm, then we're good to go. A lot of times that'll weed them out. And a lot of times the manufacturer will tell you, who? Like, we've never heard of that person. So asking is the best bet, and if you want to be abundantly clear, call the manufacturer.
Okay, Corey, question for you.
Yeah.
For buying from distributors, we noticed that we do actually pay for your book.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I started dipping into the wholesale. And we found a distributors and we contact them. And the term of the price they give it to us,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't that great. And then we have to flip from our side to send to Amazon. That's another margin gonna be cut. So end of the day, they have such a big category, but we only able to like score under like a handful prices,
Mm-hmm.
handful products. And in that scenario, how would you do with the pricing? Price.
So a
With
couple.
the distributor, not like with the brand.
Yep, good question. So a couple of ways, I guess a couple of answers to that question, or not necessarily a question, but a couple of thoughts on that. So first and foremost, you said you identified, a couple of products from that brand that made sense, that are profitable, but 99% of the catalog worthless. So that's kind of the name of the game, right? With any distributor out there, 97 to 99% of the catalog is not going to be profitable. The key is finding that small subset of products or those 1 to 3 brands that they do carry that are super profitable. And that's something that I've noticed too, is that, again, you put in a lot of work to review a catalog and you only find like 2 or 3 products. But what you'll find is that when you find one product from a distributor, from a given brand, a lot of times their pricing on that specific brand is good. So even if you only found one product from a brand, look deeper into that brand from that distributor, because I guarantee you glossed over a couple of products that you might be able to add to that PO. Because in my experience, when it comes to buying from distributors, every distributor is going to have strengths and weaknesses. Some distributors are going to have awesome pricing on brand A, terrible pricing on brand B, and then you go to their competitor who's practically the same company, and they've got terrible pricing on brand A, but great pricing on brand B, right? So every distributor has their strengths and weaknesses. I've talked to distributors, let's just use tools as an example. I've talked to 3 different tool distributors that are all similar size, they're all authorized, they're all legit. They might be carrying product A, one might be priced at 30, the other's priced at 32, the other one's at like 21, right? Because this supplier has a 40-year relationship with that manufacturer, so they have like grandfathered into really good pricing, for example. Does that make sense? So a lot of times it's finding like, what are these couple of brands that this distributor can be competitive on? And then I'm just gonna go deep into those brands. And then I'm gonna try to use that to form a relationship with that distributor to try to get better pricing on other brands that at first glance might not be that profitable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we always stop the price, because the price given to us is already up here,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to flip to Amazon. Because the cushion is really, really minimum, especially in the category we're in, we're really concerned.
And you'll see, so one of my later slides, I've got a couple of tips on how to get discounts and like how to negotiate, how to ask for better pricing. So I won't spoil it here, but just pay attention a few slides from now, because there's one question specifically that I like to ask that almost always gets me a better price. And if it doesn't, I find out why. And you'll see here in a second, but I promise I'll help you with that.
Corey, aside from SmartStat, I just heard you mention that when you go to trade shows,
Mhm.
do you have any honey holes for trade shows that you like to go to, or are there just so many there?
There are so many. So it really depends on the niche. Like I've mentioned tools a few times because I like that category. I've got experience in that category. I've sold in that category. A great tool show that happens in Vegas, I think twice a year, it's coming up, is SEMA, S-E-M-A.
The truck show, car show, yeah.
There are so many. So, and again, going back to my point about pick a niche, right? The riches are in the niches. It's going to be, in my experience, easier if you specialize in, let's just say, tools, to show up to a tool trade show and leave that show with multiple new connections with brands, multiple new connections with tool distributors. It would be much easier to do that than go to that same show as someone who sells supplements and beauty and this and that, and happens to sell some tools, distributors and brands like retailers that specialize in their category, right? So that's another tip too. Does that kind of help you there?
For sure, yeah, just curious.
Cool. So when it comes to distributors, again, we talked about how to find brands using Smart Scout, but when it comes to finding distributors, this is the way that I like to do it, and it's actually very easy. And it's simply letting your brand, like the brands that you're contacting, the brand leads that you have, let them lead you to their distributors, right? This is the simplest concept at the end of the day, and I don't know why it took me multiple years to kind of grasp this, because the way that I used to teach this for the longest time, and by the way, this still works, it's just not as effective as what I'm about to tell you, but what I used to teach is like, hey, go to Google, search your city name, and then category name, and then distributor. So for example, Charlotte, North Carolina, tool distributor. You're gonna have 300 pages of Google results. You're gonna go through those results. You're gonna, don't be afraid to go to page 10, 15, 20, because a lot of times the best suppliers are buried into those search results. But that's how you do distributor research. You pick out good ones, you add them to your spreadsheet, you call them up, right? That's the old way. The new way, which again, in my experience has been way more effective, is to focus on contacting brands, finding brands that are qualified and calling brands, and then letting those brands tell you who their distributors are. So to kind of give you an example of what this looks like, and I was doing this work this week, right? I'm cold calling brands every day. But an example this week is I cold called a brand. They said, hey, we don't sell directly to anybody that does not have a history of purchasing our products. So sorry, we can't open an account. So I said, okay, no worries. Well, hey, while I have you, do you mind putting me in touch with your best distributor that services the Southeast, because I'm here in Charlotte? And she was like, oh yeah, that's distributor X, distributor Y, and distributor Z. Do you want me to email you their contact information? Yes, I absolutely would. So she sends me an email with these 3 distributors by name, their website, their phone number. So right there, we've got 3 legitimate authorized distributors that 1, we can play against each other to get better pricing when we get to that point. But 2, I can call those distributors and say, hey, XYZ, so-and-so, like Susan at brand Y told me to call you guys, right? So it's more of like it's no longer a cold call. It's, hey, Susan at this brand told me to call you guys because you're the distributor for the Southeast. She told me to contact you guys about getting set up as a new dealer. And I had that exact conversation. They're like, oh yeah, we love that brand. Sure, let me put you through to George in sales, right? And it's such an easier conversation, even easier than cold calling that distributor and saying, hey, I'd like to become a new dealer, because you have that reference of that brand that you already talked to. So in my experience, guys, when I'm calling brands, if they shut me down when I'm trying to ask for a direct account, I'll pivot to, okay, no worries, can you put me in touch with a distributor in your area, right? And sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, but when they do, usually it's not just one distributor, usually it's 2, 3, 4, or 5. And again, by just inserting that line into your conversation when you're calling brands of, well, hey, can you put me in touch with a distributor in your area? You will pretty quickly build up a Rolodex of, again, legitimate authorized distributors in a given niche. And that is, in 2024, how I find distributors so much more easily.
Corey,
Yep.
before you move to next, so if you, you say 2024, the best way to contact the brand. So if initially you contact the brand, you're going to place your initial order. It won't be big, right? It's gonna be small. How you actually talk to them? Hey, I only wanna order a box of your product to test out the market instead of order pallets.
Mm-hmm.
How would you deal with that part?
So, and that's a good question, right? So basically it's like, well, what if your opening order is not gonna be big enough to excite a brand, more or less?
Yeah.
So, and that's again, very common question that I get, because I think that's a limiting belief that people have, is that, oh, for a brand to wanna work with me, I've gotta spend $5,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 on my first order. That's not necessarily true. So a great example is a brand that I talked to 3 days ago. Their minimum order for new accounts was $250, right? Now, the order that I wanted to place was like $1,500, $2K. And again, I knew that I could place $250 and they would have no issues with it. So a lot of times, again, brands don't have as high minimums as you would expect. And if they do, and you want to place a test order because you're more comfortable with that, that's when I would explain to them, hey, what I'd like to do is, your minimum's at $5K. I think my opening order is only going to be like $1,200. So how about this? How about you put me in touch with your distributor that services the Southeast? I'll buy through them a couple of times, and once we've had experience with the product, I'll come back to you guys and order 5K. You see what I mean? So again, trying to like always parlay. If you can't work with the brand, try to in some way parlay that to an introduction to a distributor. Yep.
Isn't it more profitable to work with the brand since they're the distributor? Because everybody has to mark it up.
So sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I'll tell you why. Because think about it from this perspective, right? I like to use like Nestle as an example. Obviously huge mega brand, huge conglomerate. If I go to Nestle, and again, Nestle's not going to work directly with me, but for the sake of the example, if I go to Nestle and I want to buy $50,000 worth of inventory, right? My pricing is going to be here. If I want to buy from a Nestle distributor, my pricing, even though I'm not buying directly from Nestle, is probably going to be here because that distributor is buying, instead of $50,000 at a time, $50 million at a time, right? And so they're able to pass some of those savings on to me. Now, again, there are cases where buying directly from the brand is more profitable. It just depends on the brand. Does that answer your question? Anybody else have any questions for now? Keep on going. Any in the chat there? All right.
So when you call your distributor or your brand, is your goal to set up the account there on the call? And what kind of pushback or kind of speed bump do you get in terms of that initial call? And if you're anticipating that speed bump, like when I used to cold call, I would always anticipate no.
Yep.
Right? So I'm expecting to know what is your follow-up, I guess, is my kind of like, that's when you go to triage question.
Yeah. So I'll touch on that for sure. So when calling any, well, first of all, let's kind of separate it out between brands and distributors, right? Because your pitch to a brand, not necessarily your pitch, but the way you approach a brand is going to be a little different than the way you approach a distributor, because brands care more about how they're being portrayed on Amazon. What does their pricing look like? How do their listings look? Are their sellers advertising for them? They care about more of these intangibles more so than distributors, because again, distributors don't own the brands that they carry. Distributors exist to move product. So when I'm calling a distributor, I'm not necessarily anticipating a no, because again, I'm a customer, I'm ready to buy, they want to move product. It should be a pretty simple conversation. So when I call a distributor, I'm like, hey, I'm ready to, I need to talk to somebody in sales. I'm here in the Southeast. Who's your rep that covers the Southeast? I'm ready to buy, let's go, right? And typically, that's going to be an easier conversation. Now with the brand, again, brands are going to be much more protective over who they sell to, over who they allow to represent their brand on Amazon. So when I'm calling a brand, I'm expecting a no 100 times out of 100. In fact, if you open an account with a brand on that first interaction, it's going to be a bad account. It's either not going to be profitable or it's going to be super saturated. And on the off chance that it is profitable, it won't be for long. Because there have been plenty of brands that I've closed on the call number one, and I'm looking at their pricing, I'm like, this is profitable. How is this the case? Why is this so easy? And then 3 weeks later, there's 25 other sellers on the listing, right? Because there's no barrier to entry. So really, you want to hear a no. When I hear a no, I'm like, okay, great. Now I can go and follow up, because I've always closed my best accounts through follow-up. So does that answer your question there? I know there was like a couple of them built in, but yeah, expect the no. No's a good thing. You're gonna make your money from the follow-up every single time. All right, so we talked about how we let brands lead us to distributors. Okay, so this is my criteria for what a good brand looks like for a wholesale seller. So guys, if you take no photos of this presentation, if you take nothing else away, take a picture of this, write this down. Again, this is what took me multiple years of trial and error, of selling good products, of selling bad products, to kind of develop this criteria for what a good brand looks like. So I'm going to touch on each point one by one, and if we have questions on any of these points, guys, as always, feel free to ask questions. So criteria number one, if for me to call a brand, for me to want to carry a brand, I have to look at their listings on Amazon and see that they are quote unquote third-party friendly. Now, what I mean by that is I want to see at least 2 to 3 or more FBA sellers across most of their listings. And you might be thinking to yourself, you might be like, well, why would I want to see other sellers? Why would I want competition? That doesn't make sense. But when you think about it, right, to use the example that we used earlier of JB Tools, again, when there are other FBA sellers selling a brand, they've already done the legwork. We know it sells, right? Because why would they be selling it if it wasn't? It's probably profitable, because why would they be selling it if it wasn't? So by seeing existing FBA competition on a brand's listings, that's a good thing. That validates it for me, right? So I like to see at least 2 FBA sellers on average. Second criteria is I want to make sure that the main listings that that brand has on Amazon, at least the ones that I want to sell on, I just don't want Amazon to be dominating those listings, right? So we looked at, Carlos pulled up a listing earlier. Remember, it was that like shampoo that we looked at, and Amazon was on that listing in the buy box with 10,000 plus units, and we didn't see the Keepa graph on that listing, but I guarantee you if we looked at that Keepa, Amazon would be in stock for the whole last year, never gone out of stock. So I like to avoid listings and brands like that. I want to see listings where Amazon is on the listing for less than 50% of the last year. Because again, if they're on it for less than half the year, that's half of the time that I could be probably making some decent sales if I'm on this listing. So that's the second criteria. And then third criteria, last but not least, they've just got to have one product that's worth my time, right? Now, in parentheses, I say subjective because this third criteria is absolutely subjective. Because what's worth my time might not be worth Carlos's time, but it might be worth one of your, like, right? So everybody's got a different criteria for what is worth their time. Now, a general rule of thumb, and caveat to these 3 criteria, there's always exceptions to every one of these, so please take these with some sort of a grain of salt. But 50 plus units sold per month is kind of the baseline that I look for, right? If a product's selling less than 50 units per month, then it better be an expensive product, it better be a high ticket product, because I'm probably only gonna sell 5, 10, 15 of them per month. But if it's an expensive product, that might mean, you know, a few $100s in profit per month. So again, those are the 3 criteria. I'll leave them up here for a second. I'll pause specifically on this slide to take any questions because again, this can get a little nuanced, but like I said, there's exceptions to every rule. So do not take these as law, but take them as more of a guide. Yep?
So you mentioned you have your fulfillment center in different states, and if you have once you're sourcing, what's your ROI, minimum ROI, fix your profit level that after the purchase fee, shipping fee to your fulfillment center,
Mm-hmm.
and from your fulfillment center to FBA, and after the labor and everything, what's your minimum ROI you're looking for?
Good question. And so I've got a little bit of a different rule as far as like minimum and what I look for profit, probably than most people, because my goal with everything is I try to simplify things. My criteria used to be, it's like, well, it's got to be, I've got to make $2 in profit per unit, and it's got to be at this ROI, and it's got to be selling this many units per month, and it's got to hit all these different boxes. But when I thought about it, I'm like, is there a way to simplify that? Yes, in the sense that, well, how about we just buy products that we think are going to make us X amount of profit per month? Does that make sense? So instead of wondering like, well, I need $3 per unit, I need to sell at least 100 units per month, I need to do this, I need to do that, we're like, no, let's make it easy. We're only going to buy products that are going to make us $250 per month in profit at a minimum gross margin of 10%. And that's it. So that could, and what you'll find is like by simplifying it that way, it throws sales rank out the window, it throws units sold per month out the window. All we care about is monthly profit. So that means that if I source a product and it's going to make me $250 in profit per unit, if I sell 1 unit per month, that product meets my criteria and I'm going to buy it. You see what I mean? Assuming my gross margin is over 10%, like I said. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, if I find a product and I'm only making $1 per unit, but I can sell 250 units per month, then that also meets my criteria. Again, assuming it's over my 10% gross margin. Does that make sense? Kind of setting just like a monthly profit goal takes a lot of the other guesswork out of the equation. Yep?
What are the Amazon selling fees?
You mean in terms of, for me? So I think on average as a percentage of our revenue, it's around 29% or 28 or 29%, because we sell our ASP, our average sale price is a lot higher than most. So if you're selling lower ticket products like $20 or less, your platform fees are probably going to be 30 to 33% of your revenue on average. The higher ticket products you sell, the lower your fees will be as a percentage of revenue. Does that make sense?
Corey, when you're going to trade shows and you're going to SEMA, and you walk across a booth and you find a new product or a new item, and they are selling on Amazon, but they don't have those two FBA sellers, do you engage with them, number one? Number two, if you do find them on Amazon and I find a lot of sellers that are new and they say, yeah, I'm on Amazon, and they just kind of like, they're on Amazon just to kind of check that box.
Yep.
Do you ever ask for exclusivity, and do you approach them, or is that just not in your business model to approach brands that are maybe new, or maybe they are already selling, but maybe they haven't even thought about or entertaining the idea of having someone else take over their listing and take that Amazon headache away from them?
Absolutely. So you talked about exclusivity, right? Which again, for the folks here, if you're newer to wholesale, that simply means being the exclusive seller for a single ASIN, or in a perfect world for the whole brand, right? So that's kind of the holy grail of wholesale. If you can get a signed contract exclusive with a brand, then you're the only seller who can sell that brand, and that's just gonna keep making you money on autopilot. You gotta replenish, of course, you gotta manage ads and do the things you promised the brand you were gonna do, but that's gonna make you a lot of money. Now, do I bring that up and then, like, if I'm walking by a brand at a trade show, I guess let me put it this way, regardless of how I'm communicating with a brand, I will never bring up the exclusivity conversation until I feel I've earned it, right? Until I built rapport and I placed a few orders and I know the sales rep and maybe I even know some of the higher, maybe it's a smaller company, then, and I will never come out and ask for it, but I like to ask questions to plant the seed in their mind of why that's actually gonna be a good move for them, right? So for example, it's like, hey, by the way, you know, it's been great working with you guys. I know we're on our third or fourth order now. By the way, did you guys notice that you've got like 16 different people on your main listing? And just saying, but if you were to, you know, maybe get rid of a few of those, our order today was $2,000. That order would be like $10,000 because we're having to compete with all these guys. You know, they're killing the price. They're doing all this. Have you guys ever thought about slimming down that number of sellers? And they might say, well, no, we don't want to do that right now. Okay, no worries. I'll ask again in a couple of months. Or they might say, yeah, you know, we've been meaning to do that. We can't figure out how to do it. Okay, well, are you open to my help and having a conversation and see what that looks like? So that's kind of my approach. But the other part of your question is, well, what if you see on their listing, it's either just the brand themselves and you see them at a trade show, like, is it worth a conversation? It's worth a conversation if they're bad at Amazon, right? Which is usually the case, because a lot of brands, especially in the niches that I mentioned, right? Tools, automotive, these are like old school brand owners. These are guys in their 60s and their 70s who've had this brand's like family owned or family run for like 3 decades. And they know that they're on Amazon, but they're not doing a good job of it. So if I see that example, let's say I'm walking down a trade show floor, I see brand X, I pull up my phone, I find brand X on Amazon, and maybe they're selling, right? They're making sales, but they've got one photo on the listing. And maybe they're only FBM, right? They're not even selling FBA. And then I search their brand name, and the sponsored listings that come up are their competitors, right? Meaning competing brands are advertising on their branded keywords, right? They're losing a ton of market share because of that. If I'm seeing all these red flags, then absolutely I'm gonna go up and have a conversation. I'm not necessarily gonna go up and say, hey, you guys suck at Amazon, can I help, right? But I'm gonna approach it just like any other conversation. Usually at a trade show, what I like to do is I like to walk up to the booth and just pick up a product off the table or off the shelf and just kind of like mess with it until the sales rep comes to me. And then I'll say, hey, yeah, you guys, you know, I saw the booth, looks like you got good stuff. I took a quick look at you guys on Amazon, right? What's going on there? How does that channel look for you guys? And again, my strategy at least, I like to ask questions. I like to get them to tell me what's going on. And then once I can uncover a pain point, I like to twist that knife, right? It's like, oh, if they tell me like, yeah, we're on Amazon, but you know, we don't really know what we're doing there. Oh, well, what's going on? Why do you not know what you're doing, right? It could be a great channel for you. What's going on? So that's kind of my approach. Cool. And then guys, again, these criteria, I hope everybody got a chance to take a picture of these. But again, these took me multiple years to kind of formulate this, what in hindsight is pretty simple. And I haven't changed it in quite a while. So this has treated us very well up to this point. Oop, we got the title there at the top. All right, now let's talk about distributor criteria, right? What makes a good distributor? So this is the other slide that I would recommend you guys take a picture of, because again, this is very simple, very straightforward, 3-step criteria for what makes a good wholesale distributor for what we're looking to do in our business, all right? So the first criteria, is I want my distributors to be primarily B2B, right? Business to business. Now, the reason for that is you're gonna come across, as I did, to the tune of hundreds of different conversations. If you Google search, again, to use tools as an example, tool distributor, Charlotte, North Carolina, you're gonna find a lot of websites and a lot of companies that call themselves distributors or say they sell at wholesale prices, and they might even have the word wholesale or the word distributor in their name, but they're a glorified retailer, right? You look on their website and they're selling at the same price that the stuff's selling for on Amazon. Couple that with the fact that there's no barrier to entry. I can go onto their website and just buy something off the website and have it sent straight to my house, right? Those are the, again, quote unquote, distributors that are gonna waste your time. They're not actually distributors because they're not B2B, right? There's gotta be an application process. I've gotta be vetted. I want some barrier to entry to work with a supplier, because if anybody can get in and work with them, they're not gonna be very profitable, usually. Second criteria is, well, actually I'm gonna get back to the second. I'm gonna touch on the third and then talk about the second because there's a story that goes along with it. So the third criteria is they've gotta carry brand name products that are already selling well on Amazon. All right, now this is kind of a given, but again, this is a criteria that I had to add because at one point, I remember I contacted a distributor of like veterinary products or kind of like pet products. And when I got their catalog, I'm like, none of this stuff's branded. This is all just like generic. Like, yes, it's vet products, but they basically just imported a bunch of like pet products, threw it on a price list, and offering it to other businesses. It's not they're not branded products. So that's when I added this criteria. So when if I'm looking at a new distributor or considering working with a new distributor, usually it's as simple as going on their website. Most every distributor is gonna have a tab for like brands we carry or manufacturers somewhere on their website. And it's as simple as if you recognize any of those brand names, then you know it's probably already selling on Amazon. But if it's a niche that maybe is a little unfamiliar to you or you haven't sold before, look at the brands they carry, copy and paste a couple of the brand names into the Amazon search bar, and just see what comes up. And all it takes is one brand that's selling well for me to want to contact that distributor. And when I contact that distributor, that's the exact brand that I'm going to mention. I'm going to say, hey, I see you guys carry brand XYZ. That brand's crushing it. That's the exact brand that we want to buy. Let's talk about us opening an account. Because the more specific you can be with these distributors, the more likely they are to take you seriously. And then lastly, right, the second criteria, I wanted to come back to this one because this was the last criteria that I added to this list. And you might not think it's necessary because it's like, well, who cares if they sell to retailers, right? As long as they're B2B, as long as they have brand name products, what does it matter? Well, the reason it matters is because there was a distributor, this was early on in my wholesale career, this is probably like 4 years ago, where I called this distributor, I talked to the sales rep, and they were B2B, right? I get on their website, they say we only sell to businesses, we don't sell to the public, so they met the first criteria. They met the third criteria, because again, on the website, they have a brands we carry tab, lots of big brand names, lots of household brands. I'm like, oh, these are great brands, I'd love to sell these. So I'm on the phone with the sales rep, and he was like, well, you know, we looked at your application, we don't think we're gonna approve you guys. I'm like, well, why, right? We're a business, we're ready to buy. And he's like, well, we really only sell to government agencies and healthcare companies, right? We don't really sell to retail. It's just not one of the verticals that we serve. And I was like, that's kind of when it clicked. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because when you're contacting a distributor, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to approve your application and for them to want to work with you. And with this particular distributor, we didn't fit the mold of the type of customer that they're normally used to working with, right? A healthcare company or a government agency. We're neither of those things. So after that conversation, I'm like, okay, now it makes sense. We need to be targeting distributors that at least somewhat cater to retailers, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're a retail business. And when you work with distributors that are used to working with retailers, they're gonna have better pricing because they know the types of margins that we need in retail. They're gonna know how to work with us because their other customers are similar to us, and it's just gonna be easier on all parties, right? So again, these are the three criteria that anytime I'm looking at a new distributor, I'm saying, all right, are they B2B? Do they sell to retail? And do they carry brand name products that already sell on Amazon? If those three boxes are checked, then it just comes down to price. It simply comes down to price, and price is always negotiable. So always run your new distributors through this criteria. All right, so let's just say we're going through our research process. We found a brand, right? Maybe we even found some products that are profitable, and now it's time to buy, right? So it's time to spend some money. It's time to buy some products, which is the fun part. Because up until this point, we put in a lot of legwork. We found a lot of brands. We vetted a lot of brands. We contacted a lot of brands. We probably got told no quite a few times, but we finally got a good account open. It looks profitable. Now we want to spend some money. So how do we go about doing that in a responsible way while also maximizing our profit? So like I mentioned earlier, right, your question earlier, my criteria for a winning product is it's got to make me X amount of profit per month. That's the only thing I pay attention to. And again, for me, that's $250 per month in profit. For a newer seller, newer sellers might be perfectly fine making $50 per month on a given product. They might want 100. They might want more. But again, bottom line is having that goal. That's what's important. And sticking to it as well. And then the formula for determining what that X per month in profit is this bottom line right here. So again, guys, I'd recommend taking a picture of this formula. But it's simply your number of competitive sellers on the listing, which I define as any FBA seller priced within 2% of the buy box. So you've got your competitive sellers divided by the total monthly sales of the listing, which a Seller Amp or a Smart Scout, any analysis tool is going to give you an estimated monthly sales. So you take your competitive sellers divided by your monthly sales, and then you take that number and you multiply it by your expected profit per unit. All right, so it's a pretty simple formula at the end of the day. This formula will give you this number, and as long as this number is above the threshold that you set for yourself, it's a buy.
You know the variations, right?
Huh?
You know the variations?
No, we do, because especially now that Amazon is giving you the X plus bought per month, you know what I mean, that badge? You know how that badge is variation specific? So yeah, ever since Amazon implemented that, so much easier. But before then it was much more difficult. Before then, what we would do is we would see how many ratings does the listing have, and then how many ratings and reviews does that specific variation have, and then dividing that percentage by the estimated monthly. It's obviously far from perfect, but that's how we did it up until this point. So yeah, thank God they added that. Yep.
Is the monthly sale the sum of the sales for each of the competitive sellers, right?
No, so the monthly sales is just how many units total is that product selling per month, right? And do you use like a Seller Amp or like what app do you use any software to determine like your profitability?
No, just Excel and they compare your prices.
Then, and also, so like what we were just saying, right? You know how a lot of time on a lot of listings, Amazon will tell you like 500 plus bought this month or 100 plus bought this month. Usually it's just taking that number because that's going to be the most accurate data as your monthly sales. Yep.
That number's also a month old, so it's better than.
Right. And I know it's not perfect, but at the end of the day, nothing's perfect, right? You could take your Seller Amp, your ASINs in, your Smart Scout, and divide it by the average. But at least I found that number, like X plus bought, is pretty accurate. Makes it easier for sure. All right, so let's talk about 3 strategies that I use for getting discounts. And this is what I promised you guys I would touch on earlier, but these 3 methods work really well. So the first one, you see it in quotes there because it's a simple question that you ask your supplier. So again, to use you guys as an example, when you're saying like we found a few products that are good, but it's a small percentage of the catalog, I would encourage you take 2 to 3 products from their catalog that are maybe borderline. It's like, oh, if I could just get a small discount, small additional discount, those would make sense. And figure out what buy cost do you need to buy at in order for it to work for you. And then what you do is you call up your sales rep and you say, hey, this product, it's right on the fence, we're so close. How many do we need to buy to get $10 a unit, right? Or whatever price you need to be at. And what you'll find is they'll either tell you, oh, well, to get $10, you've got to buy 500 units. In which case, you decide if you can buy 500 or not. And on the other hand, they might say, well, $10 is below our cost, we can't do $10. In which case, okay, I just have to move on because that product's not going to work, right? So they either tell you how many you need to buy to get that price, or they tell you that price is just not in the equation. And then you know how to focus your efforts from there. All right, so the second method, this is one of my favorite methods by far. This is super effective. I stole this from Larry Labarsky, who's Watch Me Amazon on YouTube. He mentioned this in passing years ago, but it stuck in my mind. I stole it and I named it the 2PO method, so credit goes to him for this. But how this works is you've got, usually this works best with a distributor, right? So let's say you're working with the distributor, you got a sales rep, he sent you over your pricing, you're taking a look at the catalog, and you're starting to build that purchase order, right? That opening purchase order. And let's say you've got a couple of products that are borderline. If you could get an extra, 5, 10, 15% discount, then you would buy a ton of them, but you need that discount for it to work. So what you do is you draft 2 separate purchase orders, right? Purchase order 1 is very small. It's for a very small quantity of the products that you're interested in. And the pricing on purchase order 1 is whatever pricing the distributor gave you, right? It's their pricing. Purchase order 2, same products, but significantly more units, right? Much bigger purchase order. But the difference in purchase order 2 is you went ahead and applied like a theoretical discount, right? 5%, 10%, however much you need to commit to that quantity. So again, purchase order 1 might be $500, purchase order 2 might be $10,000, but with a discount attached. Now, what you do next is very important. So you don't email those to your sales rep. You call your sales rep on the phone and you say, hey man, we're taking a look at your pricing. It looks great. I've actually got 2 purchase orders here right in front of me, ready to go. So what I'm gonna do while I have you on the phone is I'm gonna send both of these over to you, right? And it's up to you. You can process either of these. You'll notice purchase order 1's a little smaller, purchase order 2's a lot bigger, but we need a little bit of a discount to make purchase order 2 work. So hey, I'll send them over. Let me know which one you want to go with, right? And what you'll find is that, again, these sales reps, they make commission. He is going to do everything in his power to get you the pricing that you need to process purchase order number 2. He's going to run down the hall. He's going to step into his sales manager's office, and he's going to be like, what do we need to do to get them this price, right? This is a big PO. And even if he can't get you the price that you needed, in my experience, 80% of the time, you're going to get a better price than they originally offered you, right? So this is a very powerful method because, again, you're not just telling him, hey, I need a 10% discount, because he's like, well, great, everybody does, right? What am I supposed to do? But when you hand him something tangible that says, if you give me a 10% discount, you can process this order today. This is commission money in your pocket, is essentially what you're telling him. He will go to war for you, I promise you. This works really, really well. So if you implement nothing from this presentation, try that next time you're talking to a distributor.
How much is this going to push you?
Usually, like, I don't ask for more than like 10%. Now it depends on the sale price, right? So if this is like a $12 product, getting a 10% discount is just not realistic because it's just smaller dollar amount. But yeah, like 5 to 15% is probably standard for the most part.
Got a question on the stream. What if the price changes?
Like the distributor price changes or the price on Amazon?
I'll give them a chance to respond to that.
Okay, that's it. Because, and we can, I guess, kind of touch on both of those. So if the distributor price changes, so like that's kind of what we're going for. We want it to change in a downward direction. But a lot of times distributors do have price increases because brands will have price increases and they'll pass that on to the distributor. Distributor will pass it on to you. Nothing you can really do aside from trying to negotiate by buying more. And then if the Amazon price changes, it's going to constantly change. It's going to fluctuate. It's a free market, so it's going to be influenced by supply and demand. That's why we do our research. That's why we look at the Keepa. And while we're never acting with perfect information, we're acting with as much information as we can to make an educated decision in that, I'm buying this product because I believe I can sell it within this range and make a profit. Does it always happen like that? No, but a lot of the times it does, and the more experience you get, the more often that turns out well.
Corey, in your experience when you're negotiating with them, do you find it's better to go right up front and just say, where are your pricing breakpoints? So if I get 500 units, 1,000 units, 2,000 units, where can I get that breakpoint? Or are you finding your 2PO method to be a better approach?
So either can work. It really depends on, you kind of got to feel out the situation because, like, for example, if you're dealing with a big national distributor, like they're used to that question and they're probably going to have price breaks. So if I'm talking to my rep, if I'm doing my like initial call to kind of introduce myself, that might be something that I kind of slide into the conversation. It's like, hey, by the way, you got like, where do your quantity price breaks occur, right? What does that look like? And that's, I guess, a less intrusive way to ask. What I'm just trying to get people to avoid doing is like calling a distributor before they've even looked at the price list, before they've even like said anything they're interested in. They're like, well, hey, can I get a 10% discount? Because that's what I used to do. Like, and I get laughed off the phone. I'm like, why are these guys laughing at me? I'm ready to buy. I just need a little better price. But it's like, I wanted something for nothing in that case. So there's a tactful way to do it that's more direct. This is just, I like this method because this assumes that I've already had that opening conversation with the sales rep. He knows who I am. I'm just trying to kind of like grease the wheels to get this first PO in.
I guess I'm asking if you meet a distributor and you say, listen, I'm looking for pricing break, if you have any pricing break points and you kind of get crickets a little bit, I would think that then you send the 2PO method as well.
Yeah, that'd be a really good follow-up. So again, like these guys are used to that question. As long as you don't just come out and say like, I need a 10% discount. A lot of times if you ask about price breaks, they might tell you, or they might say, oh, we don't really do that. In which case, I would still try the 2PO method because they all do it. It's just a lot of times they don't say they do,
Corey, what's one thing you will never delegate in your business?
Never delegate? That's a good question. I would say the highest level supplier relationships, right? Because right now, my team, like we buy from the same small handful of suppliers we've always bought from, but there are some sales reps and some brands that like I call weekly just to check in and just to build rapport and build that relationship. So I would never like call them one day and say, hey, by the way, you're not going to hear from me anymore. You're going to hear from Griselda on my team. There's just some relationships that are worth the 10 to 15 minutes a week to kind of check in.
What about new acquisitions, new supplier acquisitions? Is that you or is that somebody else in your team?
So usually teams sending like an opening email to kind of just get a response of some sort, and then I'll follow up with a phone call. So all my team's virtual. I don't have anybody on my Amazon team based in the States. So I guess that's another thing too when it comes to just like closing brands or closing new distributors. That's always been me. Yep. And always on the phone, right? And now I'll let my team get on the phone. They have heavy Filipino accents. It's very clear that they're not from here, but I let them do that with suppliers that we already work with, right? That we've already closed. That I would never have them doing like sales, if that makes sense. Oh, and last thing I mentioned, or I guess last thing I have here that I forgot to mention is, guys, make suppliers compete for your business. And this is one of the, I guess, core things that I like to teach when I teach people wholesale, is that a lot of sellers, especially newer ones, right, especially the ones that are newer to wholesale, they call these distributors and they call these brands and they're timid and they think that they're asking the world to try to open a wholesale account, when in reality, the script is flipped, right? We are the buyer. We have the money. We are cold calling these people looking to spend money with them, right? How crazy is that when you think about it, like the normal cold calling like experience? Usually you're cold calling somebody to try to sell them something. In our case, we're cold calling people trying to put money in their pocket. Yeah, and it's like, I get, it's still intimidating. You're still gonna get told no. You're still gonna get like just brutally rejected from time to time. But it's that mindset shift of, again, we're the buyer, we have the money, we're in the power position. Let's flip the script and make suppliers compete for our business, right? Instead of us begging to open a wholesale account, which again, I did for many years.
I'm a brand owner, and I would love to have people sell my stuff.
Well,
How do you do that?
so I think a lot of it depends on like so you think about it from the opposite direction, right? A lot of what I'm doing is thinking, well, what value can I provide to the brand? Why would a brand want to work with me? So in your case, it's kind of opposite situation. It's like, well, why would a wholesaler want to buy from me? Why would a distributor want to buy from me? And now, again, I don't know any details about your brand, but if you have traction on Amazon, if you're a decent sized brand, there's a lot of sellers that would want to buy your product and sell it. But I would even put the onus on you and saying like, be slow and calculated with who you allow to sell. Because the worst thing you could do is say, oh, I want somebody to, I just want somebody to take this over for me and sell it on Amazon. Next thing you know, you've got the guy in his basement that just started that, he's not pricing correctly, and it can be a headache. So again, thinking what can you offer to a wholesale seller, and then also finding one that can bring value to you as well. It's always a two-way street. And last point I'll make, guys, about the make suppliers compete for your business is to get tactical with this tip. Guys, there's been so many times where I will get a quote from supplier A, again, usually a distributor. I'll get a quote, and then I will call supplier B on the phone and say, hey, I've got a quote here from your competitor. They've got me priced at $33. Can you beat it, right? And some people might think, well, isn't that unethical? Aren't you? No, not at all. This is business. These products are a commodity. If supplier A is pricing at 33 this week and supplier B is at 32, I'm gonna buy from supplier B. And if next week it's flipped, then I'm gonna buy from supplier A, right? It's who can offer me the best deal on this product for this specific order. And a lot of times, guys, it's not always the best price. It's who can offer me better terms, who can offer me quicker shipping, who has the product on hand, who can special order this product for me on a consistent, repeatable basis so I can buy maybe 60 days worth of stock at a time instead of having to place an order once a week. That's gonna be more of an administrative burden on my team. So pricing is obviously the biggest factor, but do not forget about terms, because terms, a lot of times, I would rather have better terms and better pricing.
How would you, the basic fear for me to do wholesale is I'm so afraid of my competitor taking the price.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have so much inventory on hand, how would you deal with that scenario? Your competitor on the same listing is taking the price and you have such a big, massive inventory on hand. What would you do? Especially that the inventory has an expiration date.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it comes down to one, testing the product. So I guess first and foremost, I would never go super deep into a product. I would never buy a lot of a product that I hadn't already sold before, unless I was confident and, unless I was experienced, which I am, right? So I'm trying to think from your perspective. So if I'm you, I wouldn't even be in that situation that often, because I'm not going deep on anything that I haven't tested at least once or twice, right? So of course there are gonna be those situations where maybe you place a test order for 30 units. It goes great, you sell it great. So you place a follow-up order for 60 units. It sells great, awesome. So now you're like, okay, I'm comfortable with this product, it sells well, I wanna go a little deeper. Maybe I wanna buy 500 units, right? So you buy 500 based on the sales you've already made because you had a good experience, you send those in, and then a week later, some guy jumps on the listing and he's killing the price, right? That, I hate to say it, but that's just part of the game. There's not a lot of times you can anticipate that. Now, you sometimes can anticipate that when you look at a listing and that new offer count is going up steadily, right? So anytime the new offer count is going up quickly, buy box price is gonna come down, right? It's supply and demand. So I'd say 9 out of the 10 times that I've been burned, which is more than 10, but to kind of give that percentage, 9 out of 10 times if I get burned on a product, it's because I wasn't paying attention to the Keepa, and every time I go back to look, I'm like, well, of course the price tanked. The new offer count, there was 10 sellers on the listing 2 weeks before I bought it. The day that I bought it, there was 20 sellers, and now 2 weeks later, there's 30, right? So again, that new offer count is critical. And as long as that's flat or best case declining, the chances of that buy box price not tanking are a lot better.
Does Keepa have an alert for that, to see that, or is that a manual thing? Yeah.
So that's just, I've always just, when I'm looking at a listing, I just always look at the 1-year Keepa graph. I'm just like, where is the new offer count trending as of today? Now you can set alerts for, like, for example, if there's a, and this is actually a smart idea, I've never thought to do this, but let's say there's a product that you've been eyeing and it's a wholesale product, you can get it easily, but that new offer count is going up. It's like, well, I'm not gonna buy it today, but how about I set up a Keepa alert to alert me when that new offer count dips below, let's say 10 or whatever you set, right? Because then I'll get that alert, I look at the listing, I'm like, oh, everybody's sold out. I'm gonna jump in there quick with X amount of units and keep an eye on it so that if that new offer count starts going up again, then I just am a little more hesitant to replenish. Does that help?
Yep. Just trying to get into
Yeah.
get into your thought process.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, and any questions like these, doesn't matter how technical, doesn't matter how specific, I'm happy to help.
What is your best tip on converting brands that you buy from a distributor to brands that sell directly to you?
So that's a good question too. So a lot of it is like order history, right? Because that example I used earlier where I contacted that brand, they didn't want to sell to me directly until I had experience buying them from a distributor. So that's going to be one of your biggest assets when approaching a brand directly. Like there's been brands, again, that we bought from a distributor for a number of years, and then we go to approach that brand, and our position is so much stronger because like we have data. It's like, hey, we've sold X amount per month for the last 6 months of these 4 products of yours. The reason we want to, like, and also you need a kind of a reason to go direct, because a lot of brands don't want to cut out their distributor. So a lot of times a good reason is, well, hey, we love buying through XYZ distributor, but they just can't keep us in stock, right? They're always out of stock, so figured it wouldn't hurt to have a conversation about buying directly from you guys. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, great, let's talk. And other times they're like, nope, stay with distributor, in which case we're like, okay, no problem. So that's, having that sales history is key.
Sometimes in those cases, you can jump one level on the distributor, because probably that distributor doesn't have the frequency to buy to the brand, but you can go to another level up, and that, for the amount that they buy, they can provide you all the time.
That's very true. And also too, think about like the whole supply chain as a whole, right? Depending on the brand and really depending on the region, you might be buying from a distributor who's buying from a bigger distributor, kind of like you said, right? And then maybe that distributor is the one buying from the brand. So there are situations, like you said, where it's maybe you're just buying so much and that smaller distributor that you're usually buying from, they just can't keep you in stock. So they might be willing to refer you to maybe their supplier or another distributor in their industry that can meet those volume requirements. So yeah, that's a very valid tip for sure.
What's the best, I won't say considered best, what's the good category for wholesaling if you recommend for newbies?
Yeah, I get that. That's like a super common question that I get. So I can't just say like, oh, this category is the best, right? There's two ways to look at it. One, your hobbies and interests. So the example that I like to use, you hear me talking about automotive all the time because it's an easy example. So if somebody comes to me and they're a new wholesale seller and they say, hey, what's the best category? I'm gonna say, well, what are your hobbies, right? And if he says, oh, I'm a car guy, I love cars, I know everything about cars, you're like, automotive for sure, right? For you, are there any, like, you play sports? Are there any hobbies, like anything in particular that kind of stands out? Food? Well then, I mean, that's legitimate, right? Grocery would be a great category. There's nothing wrong with grocery. But what I would recommend is if you get into grocery kind of as your niche, then target those smaller to mid-sized brands, right? Forget about your Kraft, forget about your Nestle, forget about your, these big brand names, and focus on the snack food bar that is doing $15,000 a month on Amazon that's, a two-person company out of Ohio, that you can call up their 800 number and you're talking to the owner. That's the type of brands that I'm talking about. And then the other answer to that question, or another way to answer it, is sometimes people say, it's like, well, I don't have a hobby. There's nothing that I really am that passionate about. Well, my advice to those people is choose an unsexy category, something that people don't wake up one day and are like, oh, I'm gonna sell that on Amazon. And the example that I use is spark plugs. I've sold a lot of spark plugs on Amazon, right? Very large subcategory, lots of brands, and nobody wakes up one day and are like, you know what, I'm gonna start selling spark plugs on Amazon. Anybody that starts selling on Amazon, they wanna sell supplements, they wanna sell video games, they wanna sell electronics, they wanna sell beauty, and they wanna sell grocery, right? Usually like those 5 things. So just avoid those 5 things, not avoid, but like don't start there, and you're gonna find a lot of opportunities. The categories that I usually recommend, my top 3 favorite: tools and home improvement, automotive, industrial and scientific. Industrial and scientific specifically, so much opportunity there. And then even categories like patio, lawn and garden, sports and outdoors. And then so many niches within home and kitchen. Really any category, you can't go wrong. But industrial and scientific is a gold mine. I'll leave it at that.
Is this chapter recorded?
It is recorded.
Thank you.
And how are we doing on time too?
We went over, but.
Okay, we good?
Yeah.
You sure?
Jay, how much longer do you have?
I think I have like 2 more slides maybe,
Let's do it.
or maybe 1 or 2.
If anybody did have a hard stop and needed to go, feel free. We're gonna continue. We got 2 more slides.
Yep, and I'll wrap these up quick. So guys, my tips for scaling, and I'm not the biggest seller out there, right? There are guys that are way bigger than me, but these are the 4 things that have really helped me scale, out of being the bottleneck in my business to having a small team that runs things to doing a couple 7 figures per year in revenue. And the first tip, and this is the biggest tip, and this is something I struggle with, and a lot of times it's out of our control, but it's just keeping your best products in stock. I sat down one day with my team and we kind of mapped out, okay, what are our top products? What's the 80-20 within our business? And what we found is there are 9 ASINs that account for like 85% of our revenue. 9 ASINs. So when I said to our team, I'm like, guys, well, in our whole catalog is only like 25 ASINs. So we don't have a very big catalog, but again, 7 figures per year in sales. But it's like those 9 ASINs account for the majority of the business. So it's like, if we can just focus on keeping those 9 ASINs in stock.
Brands.
Huh?
How many brands?
I think 4 within those 4 brands within those 9 ASINs.
What across
Oh, across the catalog?
You said 25 SKUs in your catalog?
Yeah. 6 or 7 brands. Yeah.
25 SKUs, 7 figures is pretty.
Well, and one of the reasons was we're ungated in Gillette, which is a huge, huge advantage. Most sellers are restricted. So that's a huge part of the business.
Do you have an arbitrage angle on Gillette, or you actually have a wholesale account with Gillette?
Not with Gillette, but through a distributor that we buy a lot of volume
How many
from.
brands you think it is across the 25?
6 or 7. I'd say, yeah, 6 or 7.
And about 4 in your top 9.
Yep, exactly. So, and you know, with that said, right, like obviously we are a little concentrated in some certain brands, which is why I said earlier, I'm on the phones for the last few weeks, cold calling brands, trying to open up some more accounts and kind of diversify a little bit. But the point for the first point here, right, is keeping those best products in stock. We identified if we can keep those 9 ASINs in stock, then we're gonna make a lot of money, right? Because at any given point in time, we're out of stock on 1 to 5 of those 9. And by just keeping those in stock, we don't even need to find a ton of new products. We just gotta keep our best ones in stock. And again, that's advice that I've gotten from bigger sellers and that I've tried to give to more inexperienced sellers, and just keeping those stuff in stock is gonna go a long way. Second, getting better pricing, getting better terms, doing things like the 2PO method, asking that question, how many units do I need to buy to get X price? The moral of the story here is that every single cent you get in the form of a discount goes straight to the bottom line, goes straight into your pocket. And like I said earlier, a lot of times getting better terms is better than getting a pricing discount. So if a supplier told me, well, hey, I can't give you a 5% discount, but I can give you net 30, a lot of times I'd rather have that, because this business is all about cash flow, stretching out your cash as much as you can. So if you can get an extra 30 days to pay, or even an extra 15 or even 10 days to pay, that can help quite a bit with cash flow. Third would be to focus on growing your portfolio of products. And that's what I just like to call my inventory and like my business, right? It's kind of like your stock portfolio. You don't want 80% of your Amazon business tied up in one brand. You don't want 80% of your Amazon business tied up in 2 or 3 listings, right? So you want to look at it as a portfolio, keep it diverse, keep it moving, because there's some products that are gonna crush it some years, then they're gonna fall off. Some products that you bring into the fold that end up being your next best product. So it's always growing that portfolio. And then lastly, building your team, knowing when to delegate, knowing when not to delegate, and knowing what to delegate, right? At this point in my business, the only thing that I do is approve purchase orders. Say yes, no, or change the quantity. That's the only thing I do, again, aside from closing new suppliers and getting on the phone with our best accounts. But operationally speaking, eventually the goal is to have a team in place that do 95% of the heavy lifting for you. And once that's in place, your role as the business owner is focused on capital allocation, cash flow management, and maintaining and growing those high-level relationships. Yep.
Courtney wants to know, how do you account for returns when evaluating new accounts?
When evaluating new accounts, so yeah, it's tough to say when evaluating new accounts. In my experience, a lot of it goes based on experience. So when selling, like, for example, higher ticket electronics, I know that I'm gonna typically have a 7, 8, 10% return rate, and I kind of factor that into my numbers. But if it's a new account that you've never bought from, or a new brand that you've never sold, it's gonna be trial and error, right? You don't know. The only way to kind of have an idea is, you guys might have noticed on some listings, it'll now say like frequently returned item, right? You've probably seen that. Yeah, and I would avoid those typically. And a lot of times those have, poor reviews as well. So yeah, a lot of times you won't know until you jump in. FBA. Mm-hmm.
Are you doing any social media marketing for your business personally?
Not for my business, but for myself. So like on LinkedIn, I post every single day, and I've found they've reached out to me, 2 suppliers that we now work with quite a bit, that just from me posting about the business, they DM'd me and said, hey, we're in this category, we have these products, do you want to talk? get on a call with this guy and a sales manager. 2 days later, we're sending him a wire for 50 grand for product that we were already selling. He just had a better price. So again, I don't focus on marketing my business. I focus on marketing myself and kind of what I'm doing, and then let that kind of turn into business opportunity.
Last question, what are you using for your financials?
For the like, what do you mean exactly? Like,
Profit and loss, you're on your ERP.
so we don't use an ERP, but we use QuickBooks for, like, we have a bookkeeper who maintains the books within QuickBooks.
You're remote with your, majority of your team is in Philippines?
Yep, so it's just me and 2 other people. So I've got Criselda, she's my head of operations, she's in the Philippines, and then Ralph, he's our admin, and he's in the Philippines as well.
Are you doing any EDI with Amazon?
Mm-mm.
Corey, question, why are you using 3PLs? And do you do PPC at all for any of your brands, specifically like your big Asian and you have the Gillette?
Yep, so first question, why do we use 3PLs? So our model, actually these days, I'd say 90% of our purchase orders, our suppliers shipping them straight to FBA. So we're just kind of bypassing the 3PL altogether. Now there are some products or some suppliers that aren't willing to do that. So that's the only time we're using a 3PL these days, is when the supplier just won't ship to FBA for whatever reason. And then next question was about the PPC. So we do PPC. I think we will spend like nowhere near what a normal private label seller will spend, but you know, a few thousand per month on PPC, and we pay, or I have a friend who runs an Amazon agency, and I pay him to do it. I don't, you know, act like I'm a PPC expert. I don't even claim to know anything about PPC. I know enough to be dangerous, but I just pay somebody who lives and breathes it every day to run it.
It's a pretty popular thing to do.
Outsource it? Oh yeah, for sure. Again, like, I know I can sell a brand on why they should work with me, but when it comes to details, I'm like, talk to Sam. He's my back-end agency guy, and I'll bring him, and this is a tip too. So for those of you guys, if you're wanting to, you know, go brand direct and land some of these brand accounts, a lot of times they're gonna require value-added services like PPC and like cleaning up their listings and a lot of this stuff. And so again, I'm not the expert when it comes to that stuff. I know the experts, and a lot of times I'll have the experts sit in on a sales call with me to try to pitch the brand, knowing that if we close this brand, I'm gonna retail the product, and his company's gonna handle the PPC in the back end. So that's, we've kind of got that set up. Yeah, I love that.
Do you trust distributors from the moment that you close an account with them to send directly to what they do? And has that been you in the past before or not?
So what was the second question?
Has that gone wrong for you?
Oh, okay, so first question was, do we trust distributors to do that? It really depends, right? So there are some suppliers that we work with for 1, 2, 3 years, they didn't ship straight to FBA. They would ship to a prep center, we pay the prep center, and we go that way. And this happened on multiple occasions. We just asked the question, we're like, hey, if we like to frame it as, hey, we'll cover the shipping.
Once you understand that they're legit, but I'm saying in the beginning, once you're opening a distributor account first, you don't trust them to ship directly with you.
Only if they've done it before. Because a lot of times, again, with the way that like the retail landscape is evolving, a lot of these distributors, they know that Amazon, like they understand the opportunity with Amazon. A lot of these guys have built out like in-house fulfillment centers to where they'll say, yeah, you place an order with us, we'll prep it at X amount per unit and send it off. So if they know what they're doing and they've done it before, then I'll let them do that from the first PO. But if we have to kind of like train them or we have to ask them, they're like, oh, we've never done that before. Then I'm like, all right, let's do it with a test shipment, right? We'll make it crystal clear. We even put on the labels, this label is for X number of units for this, like this case pack, to where it's impossible for them to mess up. So once we kind of spell it out for them a few times, if they've never done it, then it gets a lot easier. Does that answer your question?
Why and how do you staff your office with people in the Philippines?
Why, you said?
Yeah, why?
Because, that's funny. Good question. Because they're significantly cheaper from a labor perspective. Their culture is very on point with that of the US, so they know what's going on here. They speak great English. The BPO industry over there, which stands for, I guess, business process outsourcing, very common. So a lot of folks over there are used to working for US-based companies. They're used to working US hours. And quite frankly, the folks here in the US, like it's gonna be impossible to find somebody to sit there in a chair for 8 hours a day and source products for a dime less than like 50 grand in the US. And that's if they're not scrolling TikTok and looking at Instagram all day, right?
Have you found a specific service that
There are a bunch of them out there. I've always found my own people. So I use a website called onlinejobs.ph, which is literally just a Filipino job board. And this is how I found all my people. Onlinejobs.ph, I post a job posting, and I've actually got a great YouTube video on this whole process step by step. It's 27 minutes long. So without just getting into the weeds, YouTube search Corey Ganim, virtual assistant. Just YouTube search my name, Corey Ganim, and then virtual assistant. And I've got, I think, 2 guides, like literally step by step exactly how I do it.
We haven't done a meetup in a bit either on VAs. Like, who would be interested in a meetup on, the A to Z on virtual assistant? From beginning to end on that. Okay.
Yeah, VAs, I mean, I cannot speak highly enough of them. They're fantastic. Obviously, just like with any employee relationship, you got to find the right person, and there's going to be folks out there that just aren't a good fit or for whatever reason, but they're fantastic people. I love them. Yep. No, you're good.
I know you started 2017, so what's your best advice for us? Where we are right now, we're still fulfilling our goal, and we're looking to leverage for next step, at least getting a, get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
To have a expand one more. What's your best advice for us to go to the next step?
So with wholesale specifically or with Amazon overall?
Or both.
So, and when you say you're out of the house, like, are you doing your own prep at your house? Okay, so.
Trust anyone to prepare for us yet, because the fees, as you said, the first question was like the fees was gonna get high, including the shipment. So we looked at all the stuff from California
Mm-hmm.
to Florida, and from our home to, that's a lot of fees.
Yeah, that is a lot. So one, I guess the first tip when it comes to just like expanding, right? I think that, and I get what you're saying, it's like handing off the prep, it's expensive, there's a lot of fees. But honestly, I think it's somewhat of a limiting belief to think that like, oh, I don't trust anybody else to touch the inventory. I promise you, when you think about it this way, right? And you guys are, if you're doing wholesale, and if you're sourcing product, once you get decent at it, wholesale sourcing is going to make you a few $100s per hour, a few $1,000s per hour, eventually a lot more than that. And when you think about the fact that you could pay a prep, you essentially could pay a prep employee $15 an hour to prep your products, you are foregoing $200 an hour in profit to save $15 an hour doing it the way you guys are doing it right now. You see what I mean? So, and that's not to say you need to outsource prep today, but if you want to scale, and your question was how do we get to the next level, that is 100% required. Either you hire somebody to do it for you in-house, or personally, I prefer paying a prep vendor to do it because that's their business. I'm not in the business of prepping products. I'm in the business of sourcing products, and I let them be in the business of prepping products because that's their specialty, right? Now, when it comes to the wholesale side, and I'm currently doing this, I haven't talked too much about it. I'm like in the process of filming a 60K in 60 days from scratch wholesale series where all I'm doing, I'm like 6 days into it. All I'm doing is each day, I'm using the methods that I showed you earlier, the Smart Scout methods, to find 3 qualified brands. That's it, 3 qualified brands per day, and I call those 3 brands, and that's it. And I do that. I'm gonna do that every day for 60 days, I guess every business day for 60 days. And again, I'm 6 days into it, and I've got a pretty solid pipeline of opportunities just from 3 a day, but doing it every day. And that's what I would say to you guys. Find 3, call 3. Find 3, call 3. And if you do that 100 times, you're gonna land 2 to 5 profitable brand direct wholesale accounts. I literally guarantee it.
Corey, I think what most people don't understand is the fact that if you want to do wholesale, you gotta make a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And again, the key is calls, not emails, right? Calls. And that's the thing that, part of it bugs me because, you know, I'll have people like, whether they're in my community or or on Twitter or wherever, they'll DM me and they'll say, hey, I've contacted 300 brands, or I've called, I've reached out to 500 distributors and I've got nothing. I'm like, okay, then let's figure out what's going on, because if you've contacted that many and they're qualified, then you should have plenty of opportunities. So of those 500 contacts, how many of them were phone calls? Oh, well, 2 of them, or none of them. It was all emails. Like, okay, well, let's take a step back, and instead of emailing 500, let's just call 100. And yes, it sucks. Yes, you're going to get voicemails. Yes, you're going to get told no. Yes, you're going to get yelled at. But that's how it works. Like, I don't know how to be much more clear other than like call, don't email, right? And I'm not telling you, obviously you know. I'm just an example for the folks here.
Do you use any kind of software to manage or to understand the fees and inventory, for example, with Lab or Salesforce?
Yeah, so we use Boxem to list products, to create shipments and list them. We use Seller Amp to determine profitability, just looking at the listing page, right? So if I'm like, just need to do a quick and dirty profit analysis, Seller Amp. But then we use Seller Board for just having like a general, like a rough idea of gross profit. But obviously that's not a replacement for a bookkeeper and a legit P&L, that type of stuff. So yeah, we do use that.
Yeah, would you recommend the Amazon FBA labeling service?
We've used it quite a bit, yeah. So in my experience, they've been good. I've heard some people who avoid it like the plague because they claim that it can slow down shipments quite a bit if you're paying Amazon to do that prep. But like I said, in my experience, we've used it to the tune of tens of thousands of units, and it's the same as, you know, they'll make the same amount of mistakes as they would if somebody else prepped it, in my experience, right? So I'd say it's perfectly fine to use. Anybody else have questions, guys? All right, we good? Sounds good. Thank you. Oh, my last QR code might not load here, but my last QR, I don't know if this works. It probably doesn't if the other one didn't. But this is a 100%, it's a 5-day free wholesale course. Each day is going to go through the 5 pillars of Amazon Wholesale. Day 1 is finding suppliers. Day 2 is contacting suppliers, sourcing products, shipping, and then virtual assistants. So if it doesn't work, go to freewholesaleguide.com. It's the same thing. And then you enter your email address, it sends it right over to you. And I wish my QR codes worked. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
When you go on Fiverr,
Mm-hmm.
there's a million people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you figure out who's the one for you?
What are you looking for?